Hey, welcome, friends. We got a Saturday edition of Cuz I Wanna. And the thing that I most wanted to do for this Cuz I Wanna is bring Ian with me, allegedly Ian, the legend of allegedly Ian. If you watch Unapologetic, if you watch my channel, you already know who Ian is. But if this is your first time meeting Ian, welcome. You're in for a treat, a philosophy guru. Ian, can you fill the audience in on kind of what your areas of expertise are and what you like to talk about the most?
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I don't know if I'd be so bold as to say my areas of expertise, but my areas of interest are primarily philosophy, philosophy of religion. I'm really interested in questions related to things like the problem of evil. How do we make sense of the horrific state of the world? If God is said to be all good and all just, how could it possibly be the case that if justice requires that God gives us what we deserve, that this could be what we deserve? That kind of encompasses my area of interest.
And you were once, I don't know if the word religious is the right word for it, but you were once at least part of a religion. And then, like many people, you kind of found your way out. What was kind of the process like for you finding your way out? And maybe what are some of the triggers that started you thinking, hey, maybe there's something amiss?
One of the things that I value most nowadays, but even when I was much younger, is the pursuit of truth, arriving at conclusions through good rational thought processes, arriving at a sound conclusion via like the use of logic. So one thing that happened to me when I was 13 years old is that I made a friend who was an atheist, and at that time I was a Christian. And he asked me the infamous question of if God could make a rock that's so heavy that he can't lift it. And instantly I knew that there was a logical problem with that. So the logic took me to a new conclusion and I followed it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, like, sometimes all you need to find is like one problem, and that kind of sets you off. I remember because I was deep into the Christian cult. I remember the first time I found like a couple of legitimate problems with the Bible, it opened the door to like, oh, well, if these problems exist, maybe there's more. Maybe I need to do some actual research, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Now you engage in a lot of philosophy. Do you have any favorites?
Like a favorite philosopher?
Mhm.
That's a good question. I haven't reflected on this. The classic answer that I'd give to this question is Simone Weil. She was an incredible philosopher. She was a French philosopher that lived in like the early 1900s. I think she died in World War II. But what's most remarkable about her is not only her philosophy, but the way that she embodies her philosophy throughout the course of her life. Her life is filled with anecdotes of her doing like incredibly moral things. It's said that she died because she was building empathy with the soldiers on the front line by trying to live off of the rations that they were living off of in World War II. And she was sick at the time, so the combination of like a low food intake eventually killed her. She died at the age of like 30, but she lived such a magnificent life. Um, I another person that comes to mind is Socrates, who likewise died doing what his beliefs prescribed him to do, which was pursue truth even at the cost of his own life. That's the one thing Socrates cared about more than anything else was the pursuit of truth, the pursuit of knowledge. And there's a lot of like dispute historically about the reason why Socrates was killed. Obviously, the charges was corrupting the youth, and then I think like impiety. But more so, if you look at the historical context for it, the likely reason why he was killed is because he educated two really notable traitors to Athens. There was, I want to say, Alcibiades is one of the people that he educated who betrayed Athens for, I think, Sparta, and then he betrayed like Sparta for maybe like Persia. But I don't know. It was at a point in Athens history where they were just fed up with, losing battles. And as soon as they got free from tyrannical control, they executed Socrates, it probably had something to do with the role that he played in educating these people and spreading like anti-democracy sentiment.
And it seems like the the more educated you become, I feel like it's harder to remain in these religions. At least that was my case. And I never tried to get out of it. Like I clung on to it as much as I could. But I mean, you have to kind of follow where the evidence leads. And now the moral argument. You've got a really interesting stance on the moral argument. Like most guys like me, I just kind of give in to the idea that we probably just have subjective morals, but you actually have a really strong argument for why that's not the case. Could you explain a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think the moral argument is very surprising because I'm sure you've noticed this, that there's been a huge uptick in the number of people that are running the moral argument, that this is like a frontline apologetic. But when you turn to the philosophical literature, it's quite a ways down. If you went to the average ethical philosopher and told them that the only way that you could get morals was through God, they would probably be pretty confused because things like divine command theory are not taken very seriously in terms of academic philosophy. And there's just a huge number of academic arguments that would attempt to ground in some objective foundation moral prescriptions, that there's like certain objective moral facts. So one argument that I think demonstrates this point quite well comes from a guy named Alan Gaworth. I don't think it's a perfect argument, but I think it's an incredibly good argument for demonstrating that there might be something to this. The argument goes like this: I'm an agent. What that means is that I take actions in order to achieve certain goals. I have goals in mind. I need to take actions in order to achieve them. But if something is a necessary means in order to achieve your goal, that's when we say that you have a reason to do it. That is to say, you ought do it. In order to take literally any action at all, to achieve literally any goal at all, you need your freedom and well-being. And because that's a necessary condition, you ought have it insofar as it's necessary for the goal that you've decided you ought have, that you ought pursue. That means that everyone's committed to saying that they ought to have their freedom and well-being, which means that they're committed to saying that others ought not interfere with their freedom and well-being, which is exactly what it means to say that you have a right to something, is that you think other people ought not interfere with your ability to do it. So just from the basis that you're an agent, you've come to the conclusion that you have a right to freedom and well-being. Everybody must arrive at that conclusion, otherwise they can't consistently pursue their goals. But if your agency is sufficient for you to have that right, well, then everybody's agency must be sufficient for them to have that right too. Therefore, Gaworth concludes that all agents have the right to freedom and well-being. And a right to freedom and well-being is just way more coherent than any sort of morality that comes out of the Bible, for example, that it outlaws fake crimes like witchcraft, and then it, fails to outlaw real atrocities like slavery. Something like the moral system that I just described gets the answers right way more often than the Bible does.
Yeah, and speaking of the biblical morals, we talk to a lot of Christians, and what you'll often hear is like, well, I have objective morals because I have a God. But I mean, God doesn't really get you to objective morals, does it?
Absolutely not. Yeah. You've seen me develop this argument over time, but yeah, the is ought gap is alive and well. It's one of the main things that moral philosophies have to confront, is how do we go from something is to therefore we ought behave in some sort of way, if we wanted to say that suffering is bad, how do we get from the fact that nobody likes to suffer to the fact that that means that it's bad? Likewise, the same sort of problem applies when it comes to God. How do we get from the fact that God said that he wants you to do these things to therefore those things are good? Typically, when you ask this question, maybe they'll say, well, God's good, but that's circular. At that
Mhm.
point, they'd be saying that the reason that you have to listen to God is because his nature is intrinsically reason giving. That doesn't really explain the reason that you have to listen to him. It just kind of stipulates that you have one. Or maybe they'll say the reason that you have to listen to God, why you ought listen to God, is that he'll torture you if you don't. I mean, like, that's great, that's nice. But somebody torturing you doesn't mean that you have like a reason to do what they say. So it kind of seems like there isn't a good answer to the question, why ought I listen to God? Why ought I do what he says?
Yeah, because if we just put like a person in the placeholder of God, said, I command you to do this. And the question becomes, ought you do this? Well, if you don't do it, I'm going to throw you into a fire. Well, they're going to rightly say, well, that doesn't mean that I ought do it unless I just want to preserve my life. But that's not really a moral system. That's self-preservation. But for some reason, when you plug God into it, now they want to special plead. They know you ought to do what God tells you to. But I've heard you have this conversation. I've never seen a believer once give a good justification for why you ought do what God tells you, other than to avoid hell.
Hmm? Yep. I don't think that there is an answer to that.
Yeah.
I think at least you'd have to appeal to some sort of morality that the atheist is free to appeal to at that point too. Like it would need to be something like even with the answer that you ought to do what God tells you to do to avoid hell, they're still presupposing moral commitments that the atheist would then be more than welcome to just take for themselves. Like, it's good to avoid suffering.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Now they have to appeal to our worldview. Like they have to
Borrowing
make an
from our
argument for suffering
worldview.
being bad. Oh man, I have heard that a lot. Atheists have to borrow from the Christian worldview, and that's why they give the moral argument because they think that if we make moral claims, we can only make moral claims because we're borrowing from the God worldview. But the moral claims from the God worldview are just unfounded. It's just based on self-preservation, so it doesn't really work. But um, friends,
Absolutely.
if you've got a good moral argument, if you got a good argument for God, even if it's a theistic concept and not a religious God, call in. The number is 720-619-2288. There's a web link in the description of the video. Ian's really nice. They're not going to eat you up. You've probably seen me on live stream get a little rough with some of the guests. Ian won't do that.
I might.
Ian is nice and polite.
No,
We
I
got
try
some
to be.
good cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
But we would love to talk to you about your God, especially listen, if you have a good, sound philosophical argument for God, like today's the day to do it. Like you guys know my philosophical depth is like a teaspoon of water. Ian's philosophical depth is much higher. They'll be able to actually break down the premises in a way which everybody can understand and really walk through the problem and tell you whether or not your syllogism works or if it doesn't. In fact, I've seen Ian actually give help to people struggling with their syllogism, trying to give them the best ammunition possible so that they can come back and give an even better argument. So I know Ian's not here just to dog on bad philosophy. I want to hear a good argument, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's I think that there's something to be said about that. When I encounter somebody who's even if they're a theist, but they're genuinely curious, they're genuinely trying to come up with a good philosophical argument, maybe they're new to it, maybe they just want some advice. I want my positions to be true. And what that means is that they need to be able to withstand any objection, including the best objection. So I want people to be developing the best objections that they can. I think that we all have a vested interest in seeing people, even people in the opposition, get better arguments because that will make our arguments better.
Yeah, actually, when I'm debating, like one of the things I hope for, which we don't get too often, but one of the things that I hope for is that I'm going to get a caller who gives me a unique argument, one that I haven't heard yet, because I feel like it gets boring hearing this. Like, how many times can you hear the kalam and still take it seriously?
Yeah, especially because it seems like for a lot of people, it almost feels like for a lot of people what they did prior to joining a debate, like a debate call-in, will be they Googled easy argument for God's existence or something like that. And they spent like 5 minutes reading up on it. And now they want to come and run it. And then, they just don't have anything to say past like the very first objection that you have to it.
Yeah, because they haven't thought about it. And I fell into that trap too when I was a young Christian. I was probably 21, maybe. And I remember I was reading some apologetics books, and these were better than the nonsense on the market right now. They were a little more scientific. And I remember I went into like an atheist forum. This was back before, social media. So you have to go to forums, like chat forums, to argue with people. I went in the atheist forum. I laid out like, here's all the reasons, why, we evolution couldn't have produced what we have today. And then it turned out not only were they nicer than I was, they were really kind to me. They had really good answers. And that was the last time I ever did that. Never again did I just barge into an atheist space and demand that my conclusions were true. And I find it quite often. A lot of the people who do that, they're these like younger believers who've been told that they have the truth, and they haven't had time to really think about whether or not what they were told is true. And they just think, well, we got them. Let's go. And it turns out that we don't got them.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said about that. I think that there's a lot of prominent like Christian figureheads that have repeated these like horrible talking points, and they've really, to be honest, I feel like they've really set up their congregation for failure whenever they go and try to, affirm just basic misunderstandings about concepts. Like when they go to you and say, "So you think we came from monkeys?" You know, there's
Every time.
there's like such a deep confusion there, and it's just so easy for the atheist to respond to the point that whoever told them that wasn't telling them that to equip them to actually do well in a discussion, but was telling them to just like help them like maybe reduce the cognitive dissonance that they feel in their heads. Like it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't seem like they were set up for success at all.
No, no, and you know what too? Like I most people did what they're doing what I used to do, which is I became a believer and then I engaged in apologetics because I wanted to not feel stupid about what I believed, rather than examining the data first and then making a decision. And because that's usually how it works, we set ourselves up for failure because a lot of us go into it thinking it's true, and then we end up going to like higher education. And then later we have to come out and be like, oh, I guess it wasn't that true. you know?
That's very interesting. I think that studying philosophy over the past couple of years has really taught me the value of that exact process. That when I'm forming a belief about a new field, right now I'm reading up on like philosophy of action. Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I was reading up on like philosophy of justice. Going into those fields, you know, I might have like some basic intuitions about it, but it taught me the importance. Like reading philosophy for so many years has taught me the importance of when I'm first entering into a new topic that I should read like a survey of the views. I should really get in there and see what views are out there and why do people believe what they believe, and then I should work from the big picture downwards as I as I'm able to see arguments eliminate certain views or prop up other different views, and I can really get a grasp of where the current conversation is at in terms of the evidence and the arguments, and from there determine what view I should hold as opposed to the opposite, picking a view and then trying to defend it as best I can.
Right. Yeah. I'm with you. So we've got a guest in queue. Mark from New Jersey is a theist. We're going to bring in Mark. Mark says, I feel like I'm in the process of deconstruction, but I still find value in religion. And I totally understand that. In fact, I was there for some time too. So, Mark, welcome to the line. You're talking to Justin and Ian. How are you?
Welcome, and thank you both for all that you do. I've watched some of your shows to start, and it's been helping me, and I appreciate it. I just had a
Thank you.
very quick possible argument, and I would like to hear your retorts. Thank you for fallacies. Thank you for teaching me logic. Thanks for all that. But I still am a bit stuck in my life. I find Sicilian, New Jersey, the whole Catholic thing. I've seen a lot of merit-based good decisions done based on the Bible, and it's hard
Mhm.
to detract from it. It's hard. It's statements, lines in the Bible, John 3:16, so on and so forth. I don't know a way around building a society that I understand. And that, please excuse me, it's my context. I realize that. And that's what I'm looking to either have changed or discussed. The system seems to work in my view, and the kindness that has come from it, or people will ill, or they don't have, I've seen a lot of it in my own life, it be positive based on those, the Bible, and not the verses like you know them, but the verses that are mostly popular. Clearly, I'm not as studied as either of you, so I don't know a way around that, and I think it actually does help, which then leads me to believe more.
Well, I'll say something real quick, and then I want to hear what Ian has to say. And here's typically what I tell people. So, like, I'm not the type of person that's going to say everything in the Bible is bad. In fact, I think there's some pretty good advice in the Bible, and sometimes, even I tell myself I should take it. Like, there's a really interesting passage that Paul repeats that comes from the Proverbs, where it says, when somebody insults you, heap coals upon their heads by not insulting them back, so on and so forth. It's this general idea that, like, if you treat somebody with kindness, even when they don't treat you with kindness, you can bring embarrassment upon them by still treating them kindly, and maybe it'll change their behavior. That kind of a principle. So I think there are some rules not rules or a wisdom in the Bible that's good. But here's where I'm at. There's a lot of that stuff exists outside of the Bible too. So, for example, if you look at the 42 confessions of Ma'at, or if you look at the Babylonian tale of the righteous sufferer, we have like these lists of like general principles to live by, and they're very similar to what we find in the Bible. Don't steal, don't commit adultery, don't utter curses against people, don't give in to sexual perversions, obey the law of the land, different things like that. Take care of your neighbor, don't neglect your God, different things like that. So my point here is, like, all the good stuff in the Bible, I can find outside of the Bible. And if I have to look at a book that says, like, God's going to have women raped and babies' heads smashed on rocks, to then also know that I shouldn't be stealing, I guess that's something that doesn't make sense to me. Like, I can know that I shouldn't steal from other societies, from other law codes, and just using human logic. I don't need the Bible for that. Does that make sense?
Does. Can I have a conversation? I don't want to use, not great, as certainly not as good as you guys at fallacies and logic, but I want to push back on that for a second, if that's okay, or try to. I'm sorry, let me gather my words. If both of those books or anything outside of it, or any writings at all, that then tend to, you guys taught me that, so thank you, that tend to lead to a God beget fallacy, and it then works, what's wrong? That's kind of where I am in my context. Clearly there's problems with it, and like, I can see that, I understand that. But if you can reference another works, what's wrong with the belief in these works is kind of where I'm stuck at. I don't know if that made sense. I'm sorry, guys, I'm trying.
Well, one thing, I think that fundamentally what we're all trying to do is live a good life. We're trying to live in such a way that we enjoy and approve of the sort of life that we're living. And a necessary component of doing that is being in line with reality. We need to be able to recognize the reality of the situation, like truths. So I think it becomes a question of what's at what cost. You can get these exact moral principles from ethical philosophy or like just elsewhere, without having to believe false things. You can believe nothing but true things and do the good action. So why would you want to believe some false things and do the good action?
That's an interesting statement, because the first thing, if I'm going to be honest, I want to say is I was taught it and seen it. And I don't know if that's programmed or indoctrinated, I don't know. But I've seen a lot of great things happen in church, or in family and friends and people coming together. It almost makes the true or false thing, to me, logically, not matter as much. But I see what you're saying. If you just found it someplace else, then how do people find all those other works without going to Bible school or doing more research or still having to go to work. And I struggle with that. And you just fall back with lack of knowledge to something that does seem to work. And maybe not for everyone. Hopefully I explained that many times. I'm not claiming that it is good. I'm claiming that it is working to some degree. Almost like a merit-based. The Bible is someplace that my family specifically looks to that has not really failed anyone per se. I don't know if that's true 100%. I can't claim it, but from my perspective. So it's hard to listen to that logical statement, and I just want to say that I've been told it, and that's true, and not still believe it. Am I making any sense? I apologize.
Yeah. One thing that I'd probably say about this, I think that there's some instances, I think that you can stabilize your life in other ways, but I definitely agree that for some people in some instances, joining a church group has helped like stabilize their life. If their life is an absolute shambles, and I mean all of like they're like addicted to a substance, all their friends are losers or whatnot. Being a part of a community might be helpful for that, but of course you can get that from various other communities. And that way, I feel like people are capable of, in communities like that, overcoming like horrible circumstances just through a property that they could get from a lot of other places, like a community. In that sense, it's kind of like training wheels. I think that for some people, in some circumstances, it could be beneficial if your life is like an absolute disaster. But if your life isn't an absolute disaster, then it's time to take the training wheels off. If you want to live to the fullest of your capacity, that requires understanding the reality around you, which means that you can't be imbuing it with things that aren't there. Otherwise, you'll come away with false understandings of reality. The reason why it's wrong to murder has nothing to do with God saying that it's wrong to murder. The reason why it's wrong to murder, for example, is because these people are like intrinsically valuable. That's the type of understanding that can only be gained after the Bible has been dispatched of. After you've taken the training wheels off, you can start to recognize the true value of other people and the sorts of things that you owe them. And from there, you start to recognize the true value of what you owe yourself. And you owe yourself that not because, God told you to take care of yourself, but because you're intrinsically valuable.
You just did something that I'd like to clarify, maybe so I can understand it more. I'm
Yeah.
leading on this call with that it's helpful, and you just turned it on its head, which I never thought of before, and I find that to be interesting. And just to make sure I understand, if I do see it working and life then is good, and that is then the goal, then take the time. Don't lean on what I was taught to do, and find out if also, like the example of murder, schmurder, however you say it, I apologize. If you have a good life, then take the time to find out that what I believe is not true, what I believe in might not be true, and find out if it's in then any place else it could be found. Is that kind of what you're saying? And I didn't see it that way. I called in saying it as, I do see it working. What's kind of the issue, in short? And you're saying, well, if it's working, understood, if it's a major problem, but if it's not a problem and things are okay and family's good and people take care of each other, look around, because you don't want to believe in maybe something that's not real. Am I saying what you said correctly? Because that does hit home a little bit.
I think so. I think that's in line with what I'm saying. I guess to go back to the bike analogy, the training wheels are great for making sure that you won't fall over, but they prevent you from going as fast as you might want to go or as fast as you can. They're a barrier. They might keep you below like some minimum. The community that you're a part of might give your life some stability to it. But it also imposes like a limitation on it. You'll only be able to go so far if your beliefs are kind of underpinned And I'm stipulating for this conversation that God is false, because it kind of sounds to me like you're saying, like, well, even if God is false, you would still want to believe because it helps you. But when you've imbued your reality with a false thing, and it's like all over the place, it affects the way that you treat other people, it affects the way that you view reality, it affects like every single thing about your worldview. Well, that means that your worldview is going to be divorced from reality, and it might have some stability to it, but every now and then reality is going to come crashing back in, and it's going to prevent you from living at the fullest of your potential. You're living your life in dedication of a thing that doesn't actually exist. And I don't think that that's a good life. I think a good life is one where you're in line with reality. You feel really good about your life, and you're right to feel really good about your life because it was a really good life and you lived like free of delusions.
Understood. I appreciate you all. I'm just trying to listen, and I'm just trying to gain as much knowledge as I possibly can. You guys have been helpful, and I
Yeah,
appreciate
and
the candor.
Yeah.
I might suggest one other thing too. I had a really good experience in the church. Like, a lot of people are hurt by the church. I never was. I had a really good experience in the church. I still like miss going to church to see my friends, but I witnessed a lot of people get hurt by the church, and I saw one phenomenon that happened a lot in the church, and this is because of what the Bible says. I saw a lot of women in abusive relationships that couldn't get out, or they felt like they were trapped and they wouldn't get out. I saw a lot of misogynistic behavior towards women in the church because all of it can be justified by the Bible. There's a lot of things that the Bible justifies, different cases of violence. And so, like, while the Bible might work for one person, it's also hurting another person over here. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like if there's a law that comes down, and let's just say it affects your taxes, and you're like, oh wow, it just lowered my tax burden. Well, it might be that this person over here has to pay more taxes, right? Just because it might be good for you doesn't mean it's good for everybody. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I struggle with. It makes it clear because I want to answer as you're talking. Um, it sounds really. It's just. I just want you to know when you speak, it's not easy. No, I didn't know this. I apologize. For me, it's not easy to dive into that because it per se works. Not works. I'm sorry. My life is good, as Ian said. It is Ian. I apologize. It's almost like challenging something. It's hard to do, and I assume you both did it. It's hard to challenge it, or when do you put time? It's almost like going to work out or being consistent on eating well, or how much do you really want to get into it if it's not per se broken? So I'm trying to challenge myself to find out. I don't want to be afraid of hell anymore for some reason, or it's just hard to get away from it. How much time do you put into it? It's just not the logical part of it when I listen to you guys and others, and I read and I'm learning fallacies. It's hard to make that change, or it's hard to not be a
Yeah,
part of your everyday. It's tough to get going. You almost have to listen to the Rocky theme to get up and get going again, especially when it's
it's
not
true.
always per se broken. That's all. I'm just making a
Yeah.
statement.
I was deep in the religion. If you've watched my channel, I was in ministry. I went to Bible college and seminary. My process of leaving was difficult like yours. I clung on to every last bit that I could until it was something I had to let go of. And it just happened to be that after enough time, I looked down and I was empty handed. There was nothing left. Right. So like, it's okay for it to be a process. For some people, it happens like flipping a switch. For other people, it's a process that takes a long time. It sounds to me like you're still in process, and that's okay. Everyone's process is going to be different. I think the goal, though, is that you're honest with yourself.
Well, and the hard part there, Justin, I really enjoy the way you handle people. It changes the way I speak. I grew up a little bit different, I'm assuming, and you take things on head on, and maybe a little bit of a bull in a china shop, and you show some patience and consistency, and it's It's really fun to listen to, and I hope you take that compliment well. It helps a dad
Appreciate that.
here. So, here's the difference, though. If I could just say something a little off color, I'm not going to go to seminary school and get that. I'm not. I feel like it's an appeal to authority when I just say, "Oh, okay, a Justin, a Matt Dillahunty, someone else said this, or someone else said this." I start to fall apart because the time's not put in, and I don't always need the time. And I don't know if you went through that, and when you did, you dove in, and you figured it all out. I don't know how much of a grounding I can find to remove what mostly works is kind of where I am. And that's tough and with a belief. Yeah, that's right, with a belief. Not happy I say that, but it almost feels like, I listened to something, it's better now. It's not better now. Like, I don't know, how much time do I put into it? I read fallacies with my sons and daughters. Like, I'm a better person for it. I'm trying to speak clearer and better and, with less words. As you can hear, I'm not doing a good job. Please insert laughter. So it's hard. You did it. You studied it. You have a grounding in it. Am I supposed to follow what you say or someone else? Or you know what I mean? If I'm making any sense, it's hard to ground an indoctrinated belief.
I can give you some advice on like good approaches. So, for example, I was challenged by an atheist. I used to, after I kind of cooled my jets a little bit when I was in my younger 20s trying to do, apologetics, I made really good friends with this atheist, and we used to chat like once a week online. And we were talking about the validity of the Bible and contradictions and things like that. And he's like, Justin, one of the problems that I see with the way that you think is you've assumed that the Bible is true and right in everything that it says. It's my job to point out where the problems are. He goes, but you're the one that is reading the book. Start at page 1 and read through it. And every page, ask yourself, is this true? And I think that advice is still good. Just go to the book. You don't need anything special. Just open the book and read it for yourself and say, hey, every page, is this something that's true? Or is this something that like I just accepted as true because somebody told it's true? And then the other thing I would add, when you get to some of the moral prescriptions in the Bible, ask yourself a second question. Is this good? Because even if it might have some air of truth to it, I think you'll find some of it's just not good. Like it's not what you would expect from a God that's good. Like, why would a God that's good say that you can own slaves perpetually and that he wants you to follow this law code, the law code that allows slavery forever? He says it on like 8 different occasions to follow this law code forever. And the law code includes perpetual slavery. And you could beat them with a rod if you wanted, right? And that's why the slave owners in the South, they pointed to the Bible. They said, this Bible says we could do it. And even like the president of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis, if you read his speeches, he says, who could condemn our practice? Certainly not the Bible, for the Bible condones it. And what we're doing is the only way that we can reach the barbarous race with this religion is by enslaving them. So I would just ask 2 questions. Read it for yourself and ask, is it true and is it good? And see what you come up with on your own time.
That's really good advice. I've been whirling around reading certain passages, but maybe I should read it from front to back and give it a shot.
Yeah.
And put some time into it if I'm curious. That was really good advice, and I appreciate both of you. I don't want to hold up. Sorry I don't fit the bill exactly for your show, but no, I appreciate you helping me.
Doing great. I would give one last suggestion. If you're looking for a really short, concise commentary for some of the difficult passages, I would grab this. I would grab a used copy of the Oxford Bible Commentary. It's a full Bible commentary. It includes the Apocrypha. It's one of the most well-respected single volume commentaries on the market. When I was in seminary, we wouldn't have used one of these. We had to use like whole sets of commentaries. But for a layperson, this is a really good resource because like you're going to get some passages that are just kind of confusing. And this commentary will explain some of that confusing stuff for you.
One more time, Oxford. What is it?
Yeah, it's the Oxford Bible Commentary.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate the conversation with both of you. It was very helpful. I appreciate it.
Well,
Yeah,
thanks for calling
absolutely.
in, and best of luck on your journey. I know like it's stressful when you question your beliefs, but I think it's worth it.
It is
Definitely.
stressful. That's a true statement. I'm sure you both went through it, but it for you, your audience, and everyone else, it's not easy. It's not. It's people think it's easy. You can hear it easy. You can listen to you guys and think it's easy to some degree, but it's not. I just want to say that's full heart,
Yeah.
at full volume. It's just not that easy. That's all.
Nope.
I
And it's
appreciate y'all.
okay to go through the emotions. I went through anger, anxiety, confusion, just like anybody else. That's all normal. That's part of the process.
Thanks, guys. I'll let you get on. I appreciate you both.
All right, cheers, friend.
Yeah, thanks so much.
What a nice guy, huh?
Yeah, super nice. Yeah.
I what I found by doing this is, there's a lot of people that are questioning and they don't know where to turn with their questions. And I get that because I didn't know either when I started.
Yeah, I bet. I definitely wasn't into the religion as deeply as you or that caller were, but I imagine that it must be like an undescribable like set of feelings to deconstruct, that it really must be like an array of nuanced, complex like feelings of betrayal and like existential dread. Like
Yeah.
you're not really sure what to do with your life. I don't know. I bet it's a whole bunch. And when you're faced with answering all these tough questions, like what should I do with my life? I bet it's way easier to just turn around and go back to the church.
Yeah, actually, a lot of people remain in the church as like cultural Christians, meaning like they just like the culture of going to church and seeing their friends, and they kind of pick some of the nice parts of the Bible and say, "Oh, that's nice," even though they don't really believe it's true, and they just kind of do that because like, well, this is kind of the culture.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. That it's familiar, it's comfortable, it's all they've
Yeah.
ever known.
Yeah, for sure. Because if for some people, when you pull the rug out, when you're really deep in it, like you ever have a dream where you're just falling and you're like, just there's nothing to reach out to. It kind of feels like that is very disorienting when you have this whole world view, like you're going to live forever. There's a God who loves you and is looking out for you. And then one day you realize none of that's really there. You're ungrounded. You're like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah. This is something I don't want to ramble about this. I certainly could. Um, I think that one of the things that I think atheist spaces should focus more on is like developing a sense of purpose, like giving people like something that they could pursue or like a framework for determining what they could pursue. I think that in terms of like, making new atheists, convincing more people of reality, I think that a lot of people probably come face to face with those exact problems where they have no idea what to do with their lives. And because it's like just so unfathomable to them, they have to stick with the thing that they're comfortable with, despite the fact that they, at some level, know that it's false.
Right. Well, we've got another caller, I think calling all the way from Iraq, a theist, apparently named Sword, who says, God is evil, but we should still worship him, which, to be fair, I've heard that before. It's just not very common. Should we call you Sword? Is that what you want to be called?
Yeah, actually, my name is Saif, but it's sword in Arabic in English.
Okay, so welcome to the line. You're
Yeah.
talking to Justin and Ian. And
There.
is it safe to assume that you believe in the Islamic version of God?
Yeah, I'm a secular Muslim, not very traditional.
Mhm.
That like kind of have my own version. There's a lot of version of Islam, and nobody agrees on what should be Islam. Like obviously, everyone have a version of his own, and he says it is the truth. But it's a spectrum.
Okay. Well, go ahead and give an argument for this. This is actually really interesting. I don't get to hear this argument very much, and I think Ian's going to have some things to say about it. So, why should we worship an evil god?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
mad curious.
that's very interesting because for me, I see that evil and goodness in reality it doesn't exist, but it exists to our human in reality, but in our mind, it, it it's like a human conception and concept to perceive the world and how we react to the world generally. But I think that God Himself essentially is not either good or evil, but He creates that for humans to perceive the world and judge by it. I think, yeah.
But why would I worship a god who has the power to cure cancer and solve world hunger and chooses not to? The things that I'm skeptical if we should worship anything, but if ever there was something that we should worship, it would need to be extremely praiseworthy. And in order to be worthy of praise, worthy of worship, it would need to be extremely good. So if God's not good, I have no idea why I would worship him.
Well, no, God is good and God is evil. So what I'm saying is that God is not all good and He's not all evil, because you can see that there is evil exists and there is good exists. So God allows both good and evil to happen. So by default, God is evil by letting evil to happen. God is good by letting goodness, by allowing goodness and advocating for it. So I believe that God doesn't necessarily have to advocate for evil, but it has to let it has to allow it. So can people perceive? So can people be tested? So in Islam, that's people differ in Islam about what I'm going to say, but in Islam, God, Allah, God uses evil to.
Hello?
What?
Are you there?
The caller is using the web client. You might need to pull the phone away from your face caller, tap it to wake it up. If your phone goes to sleep, the web client on your phone will cut the audio. So try to pull your phone away from your face, tap it, wake it up.
Hope we didn't lose him.
Yeah, I really hope we didn't lose him. There's a question I'm dying to ask him. That's so sad.
This is not an argument that I get to hear very often. The only other time I've heard it run was basically the way that they squared the round peg was that because if you don't worship God, bad things happen, like He'll
Oh,
punish you, and that was the only reasoning. So I'm curious if this is going to be different or the same.
that's like an interesting line of thought. So one of the things that gets discussed in philosophical literature is like the sorts of attitudes that we have, like, for example, like worshiping something is a sort of attitude, like if you like worship it or like praise it or things like that. And the fittingness of these attitudes that you should only hold these attitudes in circumstances where it's fitting to hold these attitudes. I feel like worship worthiness is probably pretty similar to like praiseworthiness, and praiseworthiness definitely requires the being to be like extremely morally good. So it seems like it seems like a direct contradiction to say we should praise this being because sometimes they're good and sometimes they're evil. That kind of seems true of every being.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true of myself. Sometimes I do evil and sometimes I do good. I try to do more good than evil, at least less evil than the Bible God. Um, but I think I think we lost a caller, so it is what it is.
Hmm.
But Friends, if you want to call in, it's 720-619-2288, and there's a web link in the description if you want to use your computer as opposed to your phone. We would love to hear from you. And we've got another theist in line, Samuel, calling all the way from Spain. We're getting some international guests today. It says that God is real, and I assume that this is going to be followed with an argument. But Samuel, welcome to the line. You're talking to Justin and Ian. How are you?
Yeah, the host said, so I had the question, are we going to debate the title or are we going to debate my argument for theism, sir?
Well, we don't mind debating your argument.
Okay, so my argument is saying for any x, if x is possibly externally, it's possible for x to be externally explained. There's a possible world in which x is externally explained. The BCCF is after external explanation, therefore there's a possible world in which it's externally explained. And if it's externally explained, then necessary being exists.
Great.
So first of all, we could just grant that a necessary being exists. Why would we think that it's God?
That's just what I mean by the terminology God.
Oh, well, I don't think that that's how the words are used in the philosophical literature. For example, in the philosophical literature, let's just calm down there. Most people in the philosophical literature would say that if numbers exist, then these are necessary objects, but they wouldn't say that numbers are God. Typically, the way the words let's just go. Shapiro does. I forget or Stuart Shapiro. That's his first name. Stuart Shapiro takes that view. Brutal.
Who is this guy? This is a.
You don't know Stuart Shapiro? He's an advocate of like structural Platonism.
Quine, I'm familiar with Russell, and I'm familiar with Frege, because these are the only actual.
Stuart is a contemporary one.
Yeah, I don't read random contemporaries who like.
I grant that you don't read.
I never said that, by the way. You just can't track. Anyway,
it's like pretty obvious based on the things that you've said so far.
Wait, hold up. Wait, saying you read so much, maybe you can tell me what syntactic satisfiability is?
Nope.
Oh yeah, that's a stun lock, right? That's a stun lock. Maybe you can tell me what model satisfiability is?
Model? Wait, you mean modal?
Model.
Model, what's the phrase?
Model satisfiability. What does it mean for something to be satisfiable within a model?
Did you lose the God argument so bad that this is what you have?
Ooh, you're getting blown the fuck out.
Ooh, anyway, that the sound you make after you get your back blown out? Ooh.
I don't make that noise, bro. You look like a fucking tomato, bro. You're getting smacked around in this conversation. I'm beating your ass right now, buddy.
You got slammed in this dialectic, and now all you can say is "ooh."
Just to be clear, since I don't study, just to be clear, since I don't study philosophy, I looked up the phraseology, and it's modal satisfiability, not model satisfiability.
Damn,
there's an A before the L. So we're on that.
Damn.
That's not true. Let me explain this to you.
Wait, so it's model satisfiability? Can you name an author that talks about model satisfiability? Or were you just dead wrong about that?
Yes, Russell, any contemporary, Graham Priest, J.C. Beale.
What work does Graham Priest talk about model satisfiability?
Yeah, in his works on his pair-consistent logic system, he tells us what it means for something to be satisfiable within a model. And let me speak.
Well, let's just calm down there, mouth breather. Just chill out.
What's
the name of the model, or what's the name of the paper from Graham Priest where he claims that? Just calm down there. Well, it sounds like you're getting really excited because you just told a lie, and now all you can do is freak the fuck out. Whoa, let's just calm down there. Like, I grant that you're gonna lose this argument bigly. In fact, everybody else knows that too. If you listen carefully, you can hear the slight quiver in his voice. He's pretty terrified, which is why he's talking faster and faster over time. So what I'm going to do is continue to ask you the question, what's the paper where Graham Priest talks about model satisfiability?
Can I just show you? I can't screen share, so I don't really have the ability to.
Can you just tell me the name of the paper? Would you mind?
Here. Look up satisfiability. Just look up satisfiability.
Can you give me the name of the piece where the author that you claimed talked about this?
Okay, do you really want me to go? I read it. Okay, yeah. Beyond the Limits of Thought, right? Or
Beyond the Limits of Thought by Graham Priest.
Wait, can you tell me what Graham Priest's position is on logic? Can you tell me what his position is?
Yeah, he's a dialetheist. He thinks that the law of non-contradiction is false
is a system of logic?
In some cases.
You think dialetheism is a system of logic?
You asked me what his view on logic was, and I told you.
When I ask you what's his view, I'm asking what system of logic does he hold to? Want to try again? What system of
I have
logic?
no
does he hold to?
idea.
Yeah, he
No
holds
clue.
to pure consistent logic. You dumbass. You haven't read anything from Grand Prix, dude. Holy shit.
This guy's really making himself look good.
So I pulled up a
I
PDF
look
for
good
Beyond
optically.
the
I look
Limits of
very good
Thought,
optically.
and then it turns out that you just lied.
Wait, you
Beyond
have
the
the PDF
Limits
in
of
front of you?
Thought
Maybe you can show the
actually,
PDF? Wait,
yeah, it's on
Wait, maybe-
Oxford Academic has the PDF.
wait, hold on. Maybe you can screen share? Wait, is
I
it even
can't
possible
screen
to
share
screen this?
actually. Not on this version.
Anyways. You can literally just Google.
So
right? You can
wait,
literally just
so
Google,
you made a
what does it
claim. You
mean for a
claimed
formula to
Grand
be
Priest
satis-
made a claim and
okay?
talked about model
Are you okay?
satisfiability
Are
when
you
in
okay?
fact
Sounds like
you
you're not
didn't, and now
okay.
you're freaking the fuck
Wait a
out
second.
because you know that you
Calm
got
down.
caught in a bear trap. You
Okay,
threw
why
out
are you trying to
the
get
name of an
rhetorical when you look like
author.
that, bro? Your
You
head looks like you
ascribed
fucking
positions
switched
that
in,
he
bro. Your
doesn't hold
eyes
to
are like
him.
the size of like
You've
peas, bro.
embarrassed
Calm
yourself, and you're
like
going to continue to do so while you freak the fuck out.
I'm gonna pick it up. You look like
Do you want to calm down?
you like looking terrible. So
Even
calm
your
for a second.
Wi-Fi service
Calm
is
yourself.
cutting out. It's so
Calm yourself.
embarrassed for
Calm
you.
yourself, boy. Calm yourself, boy. Calm yourself, boy.
Do you think that between the
right?
two of us, I'm the one who sounds uncalm?
Calm down, boy. You look
Are
terrible.
you talking to a mirror? You're like staring in front of a mirror. You're trying to calm yourself down so that you can stop embarrassing yourself because every time you crash out, you just embarrass yourself further and further. Like I grant that I've kicked you down the stairs in this dialectic. You know, I grant that I've slammed you so hard that you're short-circuiting. It's like we hit the little red button on the back of this guy and now he's like reset and all he can do is freak the fuck out. You know,
Are you okay?
He's cold and afraid, and he's flailing through the woods right now.
Calm yourself. Calm yourself. Calm yourself. Calm yourself.
He's still trying to calm himself down. He's still talking to the mirror.
So within the book that I mentioned, if you go to page 387, he talks about satisfiability. Now he just
no, he doesn't. I'm looking at the PDF.
Satisfiability to satisfy. Let me speak. I'm not done talking, boy. He shortens down model satisfiability to satisfiability. Satisfiability just means you're true under at least one interpretation. Does that make sense to you, Lotier?
So when you said that he was talking about model satisfiability, do you understand now that that was actually just completely false? That this was proprietary terminology that you actually made up yourself? You were trying to provide the instance where he talks about satisfiability, and you actually couldn't do that at all.
When I said model satisfiability, that just means what does it mean to be satisfied under a model? Do you know what a model is?
Ah, very informative. Ah, satisfiability is what it takes to be satisfied. Ah,
no,
what a substantive dialectic.
Means you're true under at least one interpretation. You notice how I already said that, but you just weren't tracking because you have your tracking failure because the head is the size of a fucking pea, right?
He's trying to make us forget the fact that he claimed an author talked about a thing that he just categorically didn't.
He does talk about it. He does talk
but he
about
doesn't.
it.
He doesn't talk about model satisfiability, which is the thing you said he talked about. He doesn't talk about it. And I'm sorry, right? That's why you're freaking the fuck out. It's because you embarrassed yourself in front of a lot of viewers. I'm sorry. It's probably the most number of viewers that you've ever been in front of. And I'm sorry it is live streamed to YouTube. Unfortunately, this blender is going to live on forever. Calm down there, mouth breather. Just take a deep breath. It's really going to be okay.
You don't understand philosophy. Stop LARPing. You don't understand philosophy. Stop being a fucking
That's
LARP.
great.
Right?
That's great. You understand philosophy so well that you couldn't even give an argument for God's existence, and instead you had to sprint the fuck away from it. He's trying to overtalk me, but it's not going to work because every single time you talk, you're just going to freak the fuck out and embarrass yourself more. That's all you've been doing.
I haven't actually heard an argument for a God yet.
I'm very optically appealing, buddy. Anyways, just to clarify, this is just proof.
Do you think if we looked in the live chat right now, we'd find even a single commenter who thinks that you're doing a good job right now or that you're persuading anybody?
What's the model? Ian,
by the way, this is what
jumping on the bed right now?
Right? Like, if you want a good argument for why you should stop being a theist, think about this. You know, these are what theists look like. This is what theists talk like.
Yeah,
this is what theism does to your brain. Theism collapses your brain into gibberish.
Hold on.
I bet this guy's a Christian too. I bet he believes in a specific theist. I bet he believes that the Bible God has imbued him with this intelligence.
Ian, what is a model in logic?
A model of logic?
Yes. What is
Would an example of a model be like classical logic?
Oh my God, you're so
if I understand the terminology correctly.
You don't understand the
It would just be
distinction
a
between
a system of
and a model.
inference based on like a specified set of axioms.
You're a blundering baboon. You're a blundering baboon, right? You're a
Oh, well, I
blundering
just
baboon.
answered you what a
Anyways,
model was. Can you
we can
summarize
go
back
back
what my
to the
answer was, or were you not
substance. We can go
listening?
back to the
He
This guy
wasn't
wants to
listening.
ask
We can go back
questions, but he doesn't even
to-
listen
yeah,
to
we
the
can go
answer.
back
Yeah,
to
we
the
can go back
I'll
after you
stay off
lost
the
on
meta.
that one. Yeah.
I'll stay off
Yeah,
the
we can
meta.
pivot
I'll
back
get
to the
off the meta,
substance after
sir.
you got blown the fuck out on the meta, right?
I
You
got blown
you
the fuck
lost
out.
on
How'd
the
I get blown the
substance,
fuck
so you
out?
had to
You're so much
pivot to
better
the
than
meta.
me.
You lost
Shut the
on the
fuck
meta, now
inside of
you're
you,
pivoting
because you
back
know
to
you
the
can't answer
substance.
rhetorical dick,
If
so you're
I'm a
literally
low
just
tier, then
brutal
you're
back
so
shots
low
right now.
tier, you're
You're
not
not
even on
gonna
the
be able to
tier
walk for
list.
the
This
next
is
fucking 2
pathetic.
weeks.
What
You're
an
getting those
abysmal
brutal fucking
showing.
back shots
You
in the
keep on digging
conversation,
yourself
bro. You're
into
gonna
a
get a fucking
deeper and
walker.
deeper
You're
hole,
gonna be
taking
walking
L
around
after
like
L.
that
You'll
fucking
be
kid
sitting
from
in your
Breaking
bed at
Bad
night
on the
looking
two
at the
fucking little
ceiling, thinking
thingies,
about this loss
and
that
you're
I
gonna be
handed
fucking
you,
doing that shit
thinking
all
about
over
this
the place, right?
blunder that
Because you're
you
getting your
did
black thrown out so
instantly.
bad. Okay, that makes sense to you? Does that make sense to you, sir? Maybe you can answer
Mm.
yes or no,
Nobody
sir.
heard anything you said, Samuel, because you're in the middle of talking while
Everyone
you think
understood what I
you.
said, and they understood
Nobody
that I
heard.
looked optically well.
Nobody heard a word that you said because, as it happens, when you talk while we're talking, they can't hear you. Now, subsequently, it might be that they can't hear us all the time as well, but they certainly can't hear you. So it sounds to me, and I could be wrong, it sounds like you're not here to have a substantive debate. We would love to have one. Like, I would love to hear the substance of this argument. So if you want to get back to the substance, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so I'm willing to get back to the substance immediately, right? So maybe Ian can tell me what necessity is?
What necessity? Necessity just means true in all possible worlds.
Is this a quiz or an argument?
Are
we going to give an argument or a quiz?
Ooh, that's the sound that this guy makes every time he makes a bad argument. Every time he asks a gotcha question that goes nowhere, that's the sound that this guy makes. Ooh,
so systems of modal
he's just like
logic
the
without
last
possible
guy.
world semantics don't have like necessity? What about
Sorry,
weaker
say it
systems
again?
of modal logic?
Sorry, say it again?
So what does necessity mean in weaker systems of modal logic? Because not all systems will have possible world semantics. You understand that, right?
I'm not familiar with that, no.
Yeah, it means it's true at all times on a you blundering baboon. Okay.
Oh,
anyways.
yeah, that's great. Yeah, more substanceless discussion, yeah.
Yep, me just
Yeah, I didn't hear an argument. Did you hear an argument?
You on all the logic in the world because you don't read up on logic because you're an embarrassment, right? So we're
actually interested in an argument.
Yeah, because between the two of us, the person who's embarrassing themselves is me.
I've knowledge proved you enough.
Yeah, when I don't know something, I say that I don't know it. When you don't know something, you fucking lie and say Graham Priest talked about a thing that he didn't talk about. That's the difference between you and I, is that I'm intellectually honest, whereas you've never been intellectually honest a day in your life.
This is what it looks
For anyone
like,
thinking
right?
about converting to like a theism, by the way, this is what you have to look forward to. For anyone thinking about maybe deconverting from theism, maybe allow this caller to be the thing that pushes you to do so. You know, these are the people that are at your churches. These are the people that are at your mosques. You know, these are the people that you have to look forward to.
Ian, can you tell me the phenomenology of getting blown
Sorry,
the
do you have an argument for God's existence? That's the thing that we're discussing here.
Yeah, I think we're both still waiting for an argument.
Like to get blown out by a young, humble, faint 4L? Can you tell me that? What's the phenomenology of that?
I don't know what the fuck any of those words mean, and I certainly don't read continental philosophy.
You think phenomenology is that's another blunder.
Yeah,
you think
the originators of phenomenology are continental. That's correct. Yeah, people like Husserl are continental. Yeah.
So again, we're still waiting for an argument.
When I say phenomenology, I'm just talking about the first-person subjective experience, and I want to know the first-person subjective experience of getting absolutely
I'd like to know the first-person subjective experience of giving an argument for God's existence.
Maybe you can tell me?
Maybe we could get the first-person subjective experience of being presented an argument for God.
I already did give an argument.
Right now, my first-person subjective experience is one of having some dumb fuck pivot away immediately from the substance of the discussion, so that he can lose on the meta, and then he has to pivot away from the meta.
I won on the meta, by the way. Just clarify, I won on the meta.
Oh yeah, you think?
No one heard anything
you won
you
so
said.
well on the meta that you need to. You insist, like on begging, like please think that I won on the meta, please. You have like tears in your eyes.
You're like stuttering, like looking all. Like, you look terrible. I look good.
Calm down there.
Just go back to the actual conversation, right?
Yeah, let's go back to the actual conversation. Let me quiz you on more terms. Yeah.
Yeah, so anyways, I already gave an argument. You just failed to track it, sir.
Nobody heard the argument because you talked so fast, hoping we wouldn't hear it.
Yeah,
if you want us to actually engage in the argument.
Actually, he didn't, because We can just grant that there are necessary things. We have no reason to think that those necessary things are God. Why would I think that those necessary things are personal?
Necessary being is God. So if there's a necessary being, then God exists under my semantics.
So
you understand that, right?
Under my semantics, if I said God is this water bottle, would that mean God exists?
Under your semantics, yes. What? You think that's like a got you? That's not a got
Wait, so if I stipulate that Doug the Rock is God, if under my semantics I stipulate that Doug the Rock is God, would that make Doug the Rock God?
Retard, no fucking shit.
We got another guy trying to define God into existence.
You're going to need to bow down to Doug. Also, here's one thing that's going to happen before you bow down to Doug. We don't allow people to use the R slur around here, and we certainly don't allow people to use ableist slurs. So before you even move 1 inch further, we're going to need you to recognize that that's inappropriate language. Are you capable of doing that?
It's okay because I'm autistic, right? I'm autistic, so I can say it, bro.
My son's autistic, and he wouldn't say that kind of shit. So try again.
Your son's a bitch. I'll smack him around, bro.
Oh, there we go. Now he's threatening violence against children. This guy really thinks he looks good.
Yeah.
So let me get this
straight. You'll know them by their
Fair
fruits, won't you?
Yeah. Do you believe in a God?
Do I believe in what? Repeat the question.
Do you believe in a God that has a mind that created the universe?
No, I just believe that there's a necessary thing.
Oh
no, you're just a coward and a troll. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we disagree with that.
Okay.
Shall fame for.
Okay. Are we done with this guy?
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, I mean, he really showed you.
Yeah. Gosh, you could tell after his insults weren't working, he started doing them like way more rapidly. He was getting like pretty nervous.
When he came in babbling as fast as humanly possible, I knew immediately that this was going to be a Philbro crash out because it was clear he had no intention of engaging in an actual argument. He was hoping that you wouldn't hear the premises and that he can just then reassert, are you not tracking? Are you not tracking?
Yeah.
What a nonsensical way to do a debate.
I think that's too bad because I'm actually familiar with the argument he was running, and I think it's a fascinating argument. It's quite compelling in terms of establishing the existence of a necessary being. I think the real interesting question is why would I think that that necessary being is personal?
Right. Yeah. A necessary being is different from a necessary being that is described as like the God of the Bible or the God of the Quran or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, waiting to get in. It looks like we got 3 different theists. It looks like one might be a return. Hold on. Nope, that's not a return guest. Okay, and then the third one, I want to provide reasons for God existence. So we got 2 guests that want to talk about if God's evil. And then we've got a third guest that wants to talk about whether or not God exists. Which one do you would prefer to take?
Can you say it one more time? I was picking up my pen.
Yeah, we've got 2 guests that want to talk about whether or not God's evil and 1 guest that wants to talk about whether or not God exists.
Let's do the God is evil. That sounds interesting.
Okay. Well, the first one is going to be Greg from California, a theist. And so we'll pull Greg up. It says, I want to explain why God isn't evil. Well, Greg, you're on the line with Justin and Ian. How are you doing?
Yeah, what's up, fellas?
Doing well.
Yeah, I had a sound argument for why God isn't evil. Are you ready?
Yeah, go for it.
Sure, yeah.
For all X, if X is an entity E and E is all good, then E can't do evil. God's all good, therefore God can't do evil. And then the first premises are just analytically true, and it's obviously a valid argument, so it's a sound argument.
That's a good question. Or that's interesting. Would you think that it's evil if you had the cure for cancer to not distribute it?
Yeah, I'm agnostic on that.
You're agnostic as to whether or not it would be good to cure cancer? You don't know?
The response to whether or not which premise.
This guy isn't sure whether or not it would be good to cure cancer, and this is just what theism does to your brain. It collapses your brain into gibberish moral commitments. If you had the ability to stop a rape, would it be evil if you didn't?
Wait. So what we want to know is which premise.
I asked you a yes or no question.
Oh, I know you had to ask me a dodge question because you're not going to elaborate which premise is false. So what we're going to do is figure out which premise of the argument is false. So go ahead.
Yeah, the premise of the argument that's false is premise number 2.
Okay, and then what's the argument for that?
the argument for that is what I'm giving you. I'm trying to get you to agree to some premises.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, these are the questions I've been asking. Would you agree that if you had the ability to stop pedophilia by, I don't know,
Say you
alerting
refer
all
to
of the police stations of all of the information of all of the pedophiles in the world, that it would be evil to not turn that information over to the police? Would you agree with that?
when you say you, are you referring to me, Greg?
Yeah, just like anyone with the
Oh, I don't.
capability to do so.
I just don't know the relevant question then. Do you have any relevant
Do
questions?
you want to
about me,
answer
maybe,
the
or-
question?
Oh, it's an irrelevant question.
Oh,
I
he's
don't ask.
terrified of
Sorry, I don't answer
answering the
Yeah.
question.
I wouldn't want to answer that one either. It makes God look like super evil.
So since you asked me an irrelevant question, we want to know why premise 2 is false. So instead of giving a question,
That's
you
what
can
I'm
give an argument,
doing.
even
It's a relevant
analytically.
question, and if you answered the question, I would tell you how it's relevant.
Oh, wait, what's the argument? It's a relevant question. Doesn't
What's
matter.
How do you
the
know the
argument that
argument's
it's a relevant
irrelevant if you don't
question?
know what it is?
Action or
I'm attempting to
God,
demonstrate to you the relevance, but you're so terrified of actually engaging in the discussion. And I can't blame
Here,
you, right? You kind of
why?
showed up with a bit of a losing position.
You know, since you're getting your ass raped, right? So what we want to know is
I'm
why
getting my
premise
ass
2 is
what?
false. Raped. Now,
Yeah,
what we want
I
to know
thought so.
Wow, these believers are
That's
violent
argument.
tonight. What is
Yeah.
about being a believer where you threaten violence so often?
Yeah.
What
Wow, that
kind
one's
of
gonna
derangement
one's
is
gonna
in
look
your
good.
head?
Wow, really winning souls for Christ in this dialectic.
I don't even believe God exists, but anyways,
Yeah,
so
I grant
why
that.
premise
Yeah,
two
you
is false
do,
is
liar.
analytically true. Premise 2 is analytically true, so
Do
I
we want
want
to
to know
move on
why
to the
it's
next
false.
one since this guy doesn't believe in God?
Yeah, I mean,
I still
he
think-
came up
I
here
still think
lying
God
about
can't do
believing in
evil.
God, so I guess we'll just move on to the next guest. Maybe
I
they've
still
got
think-
something of substance. Imagine like trying to shore up your position by denying your position.
Yeah.
What a great like
Bruh.
if your position is God isn't evil, then you can't say that God doesn't exist. It implies that your God does exist.
Yeah. Yeah. Or I mean, I think if you want like the reductio, like a just like a pretty direct reductio, he doesn't know whether or not it's good to cure cancer. He said, I don't know if it's good to cure cancer.
So if you don't know if it's good to cure cancer, then you have no idea of knowing if God is good, which was where his argument I think was heading. But let's grab Jesus from Guatemala, another theist, says being evil doesn't apply to God, which we've heard that before. So I think we'll have a little bit of fun with that. Welcome in. Should we pronounce it Jesus or do you prefer Jesus?
It's not Jesus. It's Jesus, but I mean, nobody really says Jesus in English.
Just making sure. Okay, Jesus, welcome to the line. You're talking to Justin and Ian, and we'd love to hear an argument or a reason why you think the word evil can't be applied to God.
I mean, it's just God. God is in a completely different category where these words just, the essence of what God is, of what we would try to understand as being God, is just not anything that these words would like apply to him as. So it's almost like some sort of weird like category error.
But that's because you've defined God as good, right? If you define God as all good, then yeah, you can't then turn around and say that God is also evil. But why would we accept the definition of God that's all good?
Well, no, I mean, this whole thing is where like God is just defined as all good by people, and all the other things are left out, right? There's all these other words that are used in the Bible to describe God, right? He's vengeful, he's spiteful, he's jealous. Like all these things are, if you really think about them, like they're kind of quite ridiculous to like say about God, right? Like,
Is that the God you believe in?
How's he jealous? Like,
is that the God you believe in?
I mean, I'm a Christian. Yeah, I believe in
so
the God of the Bible.
You believe in the Bible God. Okay. So here's my position, right? So when I say like the Bible God is evil, what I'm saying more importantly is not that I think that there's a God that's evil. It's just that I think an evil God is less likely than no God at all. So when we look at the God of the Bible, I see no reason why when I see this God stating that he's going to bring in an army and have women raped and babies' heads smashed against stones, Isaiah chapter 13, verse 16. I'm saying, hey, that's evil. I don't think there's ever an occasion where the punishment for a crime should be women being raped and babies having their heads smashed open. Do you think there's ever an occasion where that's justified?
Yeah, there would be. Yeah, we could set up hypotheticals where something like that.
Yeah, give me one.
Something like that would be.
Yeah, give me a hypothetical where it's morally good to rape women and break babies' heads open on rocks.
Well, a very simple hypothetical would be where I would be where I would understand and be in possession of all the knowledge of the state of affairs in the universe, right? Which is what God would be in.
That's
right?
not
So
answer to the question. I said give me a scenario in where that behavior is justified. I'm not asking you if God knows more than humans. I'm asking for a scenario that justifies the action.
If I was in possession of all the state of affairs in the universe, I would be able to come
I guess you weren't listening. So I'm not asking you if God is all knowledgeable. What I'm asking for is, can you give me a scenario in which the action of raping women and breaking babies' heads open would be an acceptable behavior?
From a human perspective?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to think about it hard to try to come up with a scenario for that. But it'd probably be
right.
It would be like.
Go ahead and find one. I'll wait.
Yeah, I could think of maybe it'd be them doing that thing to you, but like to one person more than you did it to them, right? So if that group of people,
I think that's horrible.
What the fuck?
So if that group of people, hold on, you asked for something, I'm giving you an answer. So if that group of people,
the more you talk, the worse it's going to be. It's the option's yours.
No. Like that's just your, like the way that you want to feel about it, right? So I'm not so interested in like your personal disposition about it. Like you can feel
it's not my disposition.
I just want to make sure I'm tracking. Right. You're saying that you would rape 1 million people if it stopped 1,000,001 rapes from happening?
Dude, we can say, you want me to put you in hypotheticals where
is that correct?
Listen, do you want me to put you in a hypothetical where you have to?
Am I tracking? I just want to make sure that I'm following along with what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm going to. I'm not going to have a conversation like the ones you had with the last people, right? So when you speak, I'm going to stop speaking. When you speak, I'm going to stop speaking. And when I speak, I just want the courtesy, right?
Okay.
And he's asking for clarification.
Yeah. To be clear, I might interrupt you, but it's only if you're not answering the question. So I just want to make sure that we're remaining linear. Like if you're answering the question, I will not interrupt you.
Right. So I did answer the question, and you are now adding your personal disposition as saying like, oh, this is going to sound really, really bad. And what I'm going to say to that is that we can start placing each other in hypotheticals. Like I can pose one where you have to rape a woman or you have to watch me shoot 10 babies with a gun in the head. And
I'm not going to rape a woman.
And from a harm reduction point of view, you have to make a decision, right?
Yeah.
And nobody's
I'm
saying
not going to rape the woman.
Whatever decision you well, yeah, the non-insane answer is that you're going to rape the woman, right? And you're not going to watch.
Well, saying you're going to rape the woman is an insane answer.
No, I wouldn't. This is like the trolley problem, but with rape, and I wouldn't rape a woman ever. Now, the reality is, this isn't really analogous to this situation because
would you rape the woman?
My question.
Let's be clear.
I think he's saying that he would rape the woman.
I think he is. Are you saying you would rape the women?
Then would I take like my hand and put it in a woman and rape her rather than watch 10 children get their heads blown off in front of me? Yes. And that's probably going to be the non-insane answer that most people are going to give.
One.
That's good. That's going to be the non-insane answer that most people are going to give. Yes.
That's insane, but also it doesn't really address my question, right? So My question, and I started about this, and I guess we got distracted, which is, remember what's happening to these women and to the babies is specifically a punishment for what like their general culture is doing, right? So what that means is that the baby is receiving a punishment for something that they didn't do, right? That's it's not just bad that you're killing babies, it's bad that you're killing babies, say for the crimes that like their parents committed. That's the scenario that I want an analogy to. Can you find me a scenario where it's okay to punish women with rape and punish babies with bashing their heads open?
That's not even like the worst thing, dude. Babies die like of cancer right now, not even for anything that their parents did do or anything. That's
yeah,
just
but
the
would
state
it
of
be
affairs
evil to
in
cause
the
them
world
to
right
have
now.
cancer? If you injected a baby with cancer, would it be evil?
Willfully injecting a baby with cancer, of course, that's something that we would consider to be evil. Yeah.
There you go. Okay, so what I'm asking for is, can you find me a scenario where it's not evil to punish a child for a crime they never committed by bashing their head open and raping their mother?
No, I already told you. I cannot find you a
Okay,
scenario where that's
so then-
not going to be considered evil
then-
by any human being.
So then what that means
That's a rational
is
human
that
being, right?
in order for it to be okay if God does it, but not okay if the man does it, now you've got relative morals. You're special pleading for God. He has a different set of morals. But the reality is, I have no reason to accept that morals are relative in that particular manner, meaning that in some occasion, it's moral to do this horrible atrocity only because the person doing it is like more powerful.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, no,
what about
I've already
God's?
told you. I've already told
What
you
about
that.
what about
that-
God's position? What about God's
Okay, are
position?
you gonna let me answer? Okay, go ahead.
I didn't ask you the question yet. I said, what about the God's position makes it okay to do what he says to do in Isaiah 13?
The omni properties of God, right, make it such that he commands things to be done, and the Israelites in this case obey what God does. And again, I've already told you from the very beginning, this thing of good or evil or bad or all these words that are used to describe God, him being jealous in the Bible, those things do not apply to him in the way that we see them, okay, as human beings.
But they do.
Those words are used. I'm almost done, all right? I know just, you might still be like heated up from the last people that you spoke to, so I get it.
I don't think
okay?
that we're the ones that sound heated. Let's just calm down.
Yeah. Also, you're just
No, I
repeating
think
this thing that you just said.
You're just jumping
You don't
in.
have to say it
You're
twice.
jumping in before I'm finished. You're jumping in.
Yeah,
before
it's
I'm
because you
finished.
sound like you're on the verge of tears, and I just want to make sure that you know that it's okay. You can calm down.
No, you don't. You don't have to do the meta, dude. It's okay. Like, just let me.
You just sound like super
okay?
upset. I'm sorry. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. You don't have to do the meta, dude. It's okay. So, I already told you that these things don't apply, right? These are just words that are used to describe things to us so that we can understand them, because he's speaking to us like children in words that we can understand. That's it.
Words
Go
don't
ahead.
mean words. That's right. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I don't believe that words don't mean words. I think when God says words, words mean words. And if your argument is that words don't mean words, I think that's incredibly weak. But I do have a final question. I think we've kind of come to the end of the road for this particular conversation, which is, if God told you to, like, I don't know, unalive your neighbor's baby, would it be right to do it?
Easiest question in the world, buddy. Things are good because God says they're good and commands them. So in a hypothetical where
then
God,
you should say yes or no.
Like, yes, dude. Let me explain it. Right. This is what you.
Oh no,
want
I don't need the explanation. I just need a yes or no.
You want like some weird little soundbite, dude. Yeah. I will answer yes or no, and then I will qualify. Is that okay with you?
You can. Well, I already know your qualification. You said it 3 times. I just need the yes or no.
Yeah, it's a yes. Can I qualify?
Oh.
Gotcha. So you would kill your neighbor's baby. So you're dangerous.
Doesn't that seem kind of fucked up?
Yeah. So let me go ahead and qualify. Yeah. So in this hypothetical that you're posing, right? The answer is yes, and it's always going to be yes. But it's a hypothetical, and God actually doesn't command that, right? He's never commanded that.
No, he does.
He doesn't command that.
We just talked about it in Isaiah 13.
I'm not an Israelite, and this isn't thousands and thousands of years ago, and he's not commanding me to do that. and Jesus Christ came afterwards and actually
he
said
could.
not to do those things, right?
If God teleported you back in time to that time period and you got that command, would you do it?
Another hypothetical, yes. If God teleported
You'd
me
rape
magically
women?
back to that time, and I was in that troop of Israelites,
You'd kill
and I was
babies?
those people, I would be doing that. I would be those Israelites. Yes.
Yeah, you know what? We believe that, and that's why we think you're a dangerous society, and that's why we do these call-in shows. Thank you for letting us know that we need to like call CPS.
Hold on.
Let's just calm down there, mouth
There's
breather.
nothing
Okay. I think that's all we need to know about that guy.
There's nothing inconsistent with me affirming these insane ethical positions. Okay, buddy.
Remember, God's not evil as long as you define him as not evil. That's
Yeah.
all you have to do, right?
Yeah. Like you could have like a neo-Nazi that just bites all of the bullets and has like a consistent ethical position, and it's like insane. You know, an ethical position being consistent is not sufficient for it to be true.
Yeah, it's baffling to me. It's hard to watch people double down on doing the atrocities. It's a difficult position to witness. I was shocked the first time I got online and started debating. When I saw it happen, it shocked me. Now it doesn't shock me anymore. But Dave, a theist from New York, says, I want to provide reasons for God's existence. Well, Dave, welcome to the line with Justin and allegedly Ian. We'd love to hear your reasons for God's existence.
Oh, yeah. Hello. Am I hearable?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I mean, I was thinking about getting a different argument earlier, but I'll just run, if intelligibility exists and God exists, intelligibility exists, therefore God exists, some type of schema like that.
Yeah. I guess what would be your justification for the first premise that if intelligibility exists, then God exists?
Yeah, it seems like begging the question.
Yeah, so just to be clear, intelligibility is the possibility to have knowledge. And the justification there is when we like ground our epistemology and to say we have knowledge is to say we have a certainty of something. All relevant datum suggests we cannot have certainty within anything outside of some type of foundation. This foundation just fits the qualities of God. So we would just say if intelligibility cannot be satisfied by anything else except for these things that meet the qualities of God, that's just what I label to be God.
Are you certain that your hearing or your sight is accurate every single time?
Am I certain that my sight and hearing is accurate every single time? No.
Yeah. Oh, you no?
Yeah, no.
Okay. Well, then this argument's going to be self-defeating insofar as that means that you can't have any knowledge of the scriptures because you would need to use your eyes to get the scriptures, and your eyesight is fallible. If the way you define knowledge is that it needs to be a 100% certainty, if you think knowledge needs to be infallible for you to have it, that means that you can't even know that you have hands because your eyesight is fallible.
Well, no, it's relevantly distinct. So we would say that we have awareness and these things called belief given predication on our knowledge. So yeah, you could say I don't know that, I'm talking to you and these things, but then I was just have a belief in it. And that's satisfactory to say that I could continue doing these types of things, right?
So
yeah,
to be clear, you don't know that
knowledge.
To be clear, you don't know what the Bible says, right?
But yeah, just to be clear, I don't know what the Bible says. So you could say I don't know.
Yeah, insofar as you'd have to. So basically, let me talk about this from like a high level. So your claim is a claim that's basically universally rejected among like epistemologists, people that study like philosophy of knowledge, which is the claim that knowledge needs to be infallible for it to qualify as knowledge, that you need 100% certainty in something in order for you to be able to know it. What that leads to is that if you've gained any knowledge that isn't absolutely certain, then it's not knowledge at that point. And because your eyesight can't give you 100% certainty in what you're seeing, that means that reading the scriptures could never give knowledge because you would do that with your eyes.
Okay, I don't think you're understanding. First, I don't even know what it means to like say that my definition is like my like a next phone. But I don't really like understand when you say that these philosophers, you know, and stuff say that my definition is wrong and they disagree with it. Like I don't really know what that means because definitions are propositions. That's just the way I use the term. To say I have knowledge into something, just to say it's 100% certain. That's why I use belief to say, yeah, I believe in the scripture. I believe my senses are reliable to say that I have read the scripture. But it doesn't say that I'm 100% certain of scripture, right? But we have foundational principles and beliefs and stuff like that that are obviously indicative of God. And some of these things, yes, do qualify for events in the scripture. But when I read the scripture, I don't go to say, oh, yeah, I 100% know this, right? I go to say, okay, well, yeah, I believe this. But then I go to say, I know God. It's probably distinct.
Oh, sure. So what's the 100% certain justification that God exists?
Well, I just gave it to you. It's a conditional.
Yeah.
To say if I have this knowledge, right, is to say that, you know, this being exists because the knowledge is contingent, right? We say it's contingent factorial upon God.
Sure. Maybe you could lay out the justification. Do you have like premises to support that if intelligibility exists, then God exists?
I mean, I just gave you the justification. I mean, I don't know why I have to go by premise base again. I mean, that just kind of seems a little.
So I know you're talking about like just grounding epistemology and like a foundation that has the properties of God. Why would I think that the metaphysical foundation would have God's properties? What's the justification for that?
Okay, so I don't think you understood. So when I go to say this that X being, right, that grounds its epistemology has, you know, a set of properties, that's just what I define God to be. It's not something that I attribute, right? That's just all God is to me, you know, a being that has these set of properties and qualities. So when you ask
properties
why,
and qualities?
it doesn't really make sense to me. Yeah, these qualities. We could just say these qualities, and given the identifiable features I believe this said thing has. And that's all I mean there.
Can I get like an extension of those qualities? Like what's the set of qualities?
We would just say it's a foundation, and then the extension of the foundation would be, you say, the grounds for anything that we could know, anything that you could say that anything we could believe. I mean, I'm not necessarily going to defend that right now, but you would say he's also the foundation, or he is just an arbitrary account, by the way. The foundation of all things we do know. He could be the foundation of all things we believe. So like if you were to say like I know the universe exists, he'll be the foundation of the universe. Just things like that. So like you just say your deemable axioms or the things you deem to be axioms, he's just the foundation of those. That's
yeah,
like
that can't.
most, I guess you
that can't be. I can derive a contradiction in that. So if God is the foundation, that means that he doesn't depend on anything for his existence, which means that he would have no parts. So God would be divinely simple. A divinely simple thing can't change. But then that means that God couldn't be the creator of the universe, because in order to bring the universe into existence, he would need to go from not being the creator to being the creator, which would be a change. So God would be unchanging because he's the ultimate foundation, but then he would need to change in order to create the universe.
Hold on. Just to re-clarify, what's the change in between creating the universe and not creating the universe?
Yeah, he goes from not being the creator to being the creator.
So why can't God why can't we just believe in something like pure act, for example, to say that God's capabilities has been extinguished through time and space, you know, and he doesn't have these, you know, possibilities. So to say that he changes,
that's the
it would
problem.
just be flawed if we go by pure act.
Well, so to be clear, do you think prior to God creating, was God a creator?
Wait, say that again?
Before God created, was God a creator?
Well, creator is just a title, right? Like when we're talking about like God, I don't.
I asked you a yes or no question.
Hold on. When you say like creator, I don't really know what it means in the objective sense. So like to us, sure, he's not a creator, but it doesn't really change anything in reality. Like that's just
okay. Sure. So God wasn't a creator. He lacked that property. and then he gained that
Yeah,
property when he created.
hold on. I just told you. I just told you it's not something objective. It's not a property.
So
Like, for
God is
example,
not
a
the
builder doesn't have
objective
the
creator?
property of being a
Wait, so
builder.
God being the creator of the universe only exists in the heads of believers? Well, I grant that. I grant that God being the creator of the universe is something that only exists in your head.
Okay, you didn't listen. So the
That's what you just said. You
term
said being a
creator.
creator isn't a real
Hold, hold,
property. So God's not
hold
really
on. I
the
gave you
creator of the
examples.
universe.
Hold on. I gave you an example as well, right? I said the term creator isn't something objective. It's something we use to describe something, right? So when you say a builder, for example, this is the example I just gave you, right? If I remove the label builder, it doesn't like defeat anything he's done in reality. It's just therefore he's not a builder, but his acts has still been there. It still will be there, right? It changes nothing about the being. That's why I just told you, creator is just a term. It has nothing to do with the substance there.
Does God have the property of being the creator of the universe?
I don't know what it means to have the property of being
Just that
a
you can
creator.
predicate it
It's
of
like saying you have
God,
the
that he's the
property of a
creator of the
title.
universe.
If you're asking, did God create the universe?
No,
I
no,
don't know
no.
what that
Could you,
means to be a
with the
property.
proposition, God created the, or God is the creator of the universe, is that true or false?
The proposition, is God the creator of the universe?
Or sorry, that wasn't a proposition,
Well,
that was a question. But is the answer to that like yes or no?
yeah, I would just be agnostic. I just wouldn't know what it means to, like, for the proposition.
You don't know
God
if
the creator of
God's
the
the
universe.
creator of the universe?
Well, just to be clear, when I say create, or when you said creator, I thought you meant the title. But if we're saying creator as in a sense that he created it, yeah, then sure, I hold that belief.
Yeah, sure. So God has this property that he's the creator. He created it. Did he
Do you
hold
think
that
your
belief
actions are
prior to
property?
creating it?
Hold
Or
on. Do you
I'm
think your
sorry, did he
actions are
hold that
property?
property
I'm
prior to
confused.
creating it, not the belief?
I don't know what it means for an act to be a property. I don't know what that means. Because you
The
described the act,
creator
and
is
then
the
said, does God
property.
have this property? Wait, wait, you said creation's a property?
Creator. Being a creator is a property.
I initially just, okay, so I don't know if you didn't understand earlier, but I just told you, creator, the term, is not a real thing. Therefore, I don't know what it
God's
means.
not really the
Before I said
creator?
this,
I
I
mean, I
don't know what
totally
it means
grant
for
that. Like, God's
creation,
not
for a
really the
creator to be a
creator.
property.
It's just kind of weird that you and I agree that the only sense in which God is the creator is inside the head of theists, you know? That's what we would expect if he's fictional. That it's just a thing that's in your head. It's not actually
That's
real.
not, hold on. That's not the type of thing that we're going to say is expected. But I just want to be entirely clear. When I say God is the creator, that is just a title to his actions, right? I don't say
So he's
God
not really
has
the
a
creator.
property
Yeah.
creator. Hold on. I'll say his actions are an independent, objective thing, therefore qualify for something relevantly distinct from this term, this label, this holder. When you say that, sure, God is the creator, and that only exists within the heads of, theists, and that's what we expect. Well, I don't really know what it means exactly, because I say God's committed these actions, and these actions have labels. So if you're going to say these, I think it's really a bad rhetorical account, because you're just then saying God, he could have created these actions, but he just has a title, and that's what we imagine.
Yeah,
That has
so
nothing to
God's
do
not
with
really
if
the
God
I get that. So God's not really the creator, but maybe to make some headway on this, do you think that God intended to create the universe prior to creating it?
So I think he intended.
Intended.
Define attention.
Yeah. Hmm?
Yeah, define intended.
Just like you mean to do it?
You mean to do it? I wouldn't know.
Oh, well, either he did or he didn't. I mean, if he didn't, then it's going to be the case that God created unintentionally, which I don't think you want to say that, because presumably you want to say that all this stuff happens for reasons. And if he did it intentionally, well, then there's the follow-up question, does God still intend to bring the universe into existence? To which the answer must be no. So that would be a change.
Well, when I say I don't know, well, when you say that God has intentions, well, me personally, I don't know the mind of God, right? And especially, I don't even really hold a belief, necessarily belief on the mind of God. I think that, some things might happen in God's mind, but intended is the way we use it. I don't know if that qualifies for the type of thing we would say that intention is for him, right? So you could say, given our understanding of intention, it could derive some contradiction. I still might have a problem with that after we run that by you, but I don't really think this derives a contradiction, more of just an epistemic gap, honestly. Like, it's not really a critique on my opinion.
That's a direct contradiction, right? You know, he would both change and be unchanging. So that is a contradiction, yeah.
Well, okay, let's just go into this. So the yes answer is a contradiction. Okay. And the contradiction is that he intended for this thing to happen, and he obviously changed. Well, no. When I say, if I was to say God intended, let's just hypothetically, suppose, God intended for the universe to be created. The universe is created. If I just was to say that he held this belief, right? He held this belief forever and ever and ever, and it just never changed. The universe was created, right? That just follows a pure act. What if the belief just still existed? What if what he means by creation is something relevantly distinct from us? What if our definition of creation could be, for example, a building, the structure of a building exists, so we say the building exists. What if the universe isn't finished? Just the questions like that. It doesn't derive a contradiction. It just derives gaps within our, I guess you say, epistemic access to the universe. What if the universe isn't finished? What if the universe doesn't exist in the way he thinks it? Doesn't really derive a contradiction. I don't believe that.
So you're just kind of saying, like, what if words meant something other than what they mean?
Well, you could say that God. Well, you could say that in a sense, but more of what I'm saying is the meaning we suppose differs between, conscious agent to conscious agent. We as a human species disagree on these things. Not necessarily disagree, right? We have different definitions, So to say that this one definition that you propose that another human might disagree with, applies to God and his possible thinking, I just don't want to know what that would necessarily mean.
Yeah.
Because
I think it's cool how all Christians turn into like postmodernists. Words just don't mean anything.
Well, I'm not saying words necessarily don't mean anything, but for words can have meaning given observation, and by meaning, I just like reference our understanding, right? But
yeah, but of course, under your definition of knowledge, you wouldn't know any of these meanings, correct? Like you wouldn't know the meaning of any word, because if the way we get meanings is through observation, and your observation is fallible, then you actually would have no knowledge of meanings. Is that correct?
Wait, you said no knowledge of meanings?
Yeah, because of course you're an infallibilist about knowledge. You think that in order to know something, you need like 100% certainty. It would follow from that if you think that, we get our meanings like a posteriori, from like empirical observation. That's how we arrive at definitions. If you think empirical observation is fallible, that just means that you can't know any meanings.
Well, I would say for some, sure, that we get off of an a posteriori, but not necessarily, no. So I would say that when we say, like, do we know a term, I don't really understand what that means, because terms aren't these things that are propositional, right? It's not as if, like, I have this 100% certainty within a term. It's just I observe, right? So, and then I just say, okay, well, it seems to be the case that this is, let's say, wood, or, this is plank, et cetera, et cetera. And this is just how we built our foundational epistemology, not necessarily epistemology, but our vocabulary, right? But then there are some terms, right, that could possibly be indescribable. So we would say those are a part of some axioms. Like some nouns, like, maybe like something like God, math, logic, things like that.
Okay. I mean, that sounds good, but then it kind of sounds like you're agreeing that, and I mean, I agree with you, like words don't have like objective meaning. It's like more like an intersubjective construct between societies that like imbue words with meaning. It just seems like you couldn't actually know what a word means, or even like the way that the word is used under your definition of knowledge.
Well, axioms aren't the type of, okay, so like the words that I qualify to be external to that methodology, those are things like axioms, principles, and, axioms and principles aren't the things to type it, exist, like, logic, that doesn't exist, we could say like math, like math existing is a really hard topic. Me personally, my understanding of math doesn't really exist. These axioms and principles, they don't exist. So it's not derivable from some type of, empirical observation. So these things are just intrinsic. Um, and when I feel like logic doesn't exist, people get a whole bunch of like fuzzy ideas about this. All I mean by logic doesn't exist is logic is a methodology, a praxis, a study. To say like these things exist is just to make a pure category error. They don't have a place in reality. They don't have spatial coordinates where the things we consider to be observable or intelligible. Just qualities like that. It purely exists in the mind.
Okay, I'm not really
Same
sure
thing
where
with
this
math.
places us with in there. I'm not really sure where that places us in the conversation.
Well, my views are simple. I just think, intelligibility needs God. I just think these things that are called axioms, or you say indicators or entailments of that, and then like are more proprietary things like a posteriori knowledge and terms and things like that. Those are contingent formulae, conceived by our senses.
Could you
And then
elaborate
like
on the claim? Could you maybe let's just focus. Maybe we can take this back to the argument. You're saying intelligibility requires God. Could you maybe like elaborate on that or give like a motivation to think that?
I mean, I could do both. Those seem like separate acts. But to elaborate on it, all I mean is for us to have any knowledge, knowledge is defined as 100% certainty within a thing. We have to assume God and we need God. Well, I won't say assume. I say we just need God, right? And the reason for that is certainty can't have predications in something fallible or something contingent, etc. So we need these references to this, objective, necessary, non-fallible thing to ground this certainty. And then, it is the case that we have certainty in, things because to doubt certain things, we collapse entirely. And then like motivation, well, that could be motivation in itself, honestly, right? If we don't have certainty in, let's say in our thought process, for example, or us thinking, we don't have certainty in us thinking. Well, to think is to have, to think is to doubt thinking. And to act like that would just be a contradiction, right? If we don't have certainty of that, because to say
Well,
we're
wait, yeah,
thinking
can't you
is
just
to
derive
assume we're
certainty like
thinking.
that? Like, couldn't you say like I'm certain beliefs exist because to believe that beliefs don't exist would be self-defeating? Therefore, beliefs must exist, and you can know that with 100% certainty. It seems like you can arrive at 100% certainty for something like that without God.
Well, those, yeah. So they're like not necessarily yes, but those are the type of things that we call logical contradictions. I would just say to ground logic in itself, or to ground these things we use for certainty and etc. We're going to need that God, because if we don't have that God
Why?
in place, to say that we doubt our to say we like doubt our thinking, it arrives at a spot where okay, well, X entity doubts X entity is thinking it. That's just it's going to like more arrive in like a liar's paradox type sentence, right? Or a self-referential schema. To solve this,
Wait,
we're
why
going to
does
need
logic
God
require
as a external
God?
being to ground it. Hmm?
Why does logic require God?
Well, yeah, I just told you. I'll tell you again. So we'll run into a liar's paradox type schema, right, or a self-referential schema. So it would just go endlessly and endlessly, and we actually have found a truth. Because if you're going to say it's a logical contradiction, then only one of that can be true by valence, right? So we would need this external being to ground it, because given the liar's paradox, it's just going to go on infinitely and infinitely and infinitely and infinitely. So if it stops at this truth, which is the fact that we do think, we're going to need this external being to ground that.
Okay, I suspected earlier, but now I'm like quite certain that you're that you don't really have like a justification for this. There's no possible way you could elaborate on what you just said in a way that would convince anyone that you're not just making this up and like putting words together. Um, why would no God lead to the liar's paradox? Like a liar's paradox like regress?
Okay.
Why would that
Okay.
be true?
I just explained this to you. So
You super
let's
didn't. I don't think
build
a
a
single
situation.
person in chat understands. And when you say, I just explained this to you when nobody understands, it's just going to make it look like you have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, I'll explain it again. Maybe you understand better. Listen in. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you think of these contradictions, like, for example, I doubt that I'm thinking. To say you doubt that you're thinking is to commit the action of thinking. But
What
without
question did I just ask
external
you?
ground,
Or were you not
huh?
listening? What question did I just ask you, or were you not listening?
Can I elaborate further?
What question did I ask you?
Yeah, you just asked me, can I elaborate further what I mean in a way that you understand this, or
No. So I'll ask the question again. So I have the antecedent, no God, and then the consequent, a liar's paradox like regress follows from that. Why is it true that if we have no God, that leads to some liar's paradox regress? Why would that be true?
I just explained that, but maybe you didn't understand. So
Yeah, I thought you were going to explain again, but then when I asked you what question I asked you, you had no idea.
Can I explain? Can I
Yeah,
explain?
please.
Okay. So yeah, when we come to these contradictions, right, it's going to follow if we don't have a ground for these logical, you could say these illogical languages, right? For example, the ones that don't permit contradictions, classical logic, right? That it's going to regress into the liar's paradox if we do not have this being who grounds it, God,
Why?
because we have no reason.
The question is why.
I was just about to get to
Skip,
why while you
I'm
asked
sorry.
me why.
Maybe every time I ask the question, it launches like an unskippable cutscene. I would really like the explanation of why it leads to a liar's paradox like regress if there's no God. I'd be interested in that.
I'm confused. You interrupt me as soon as I'm about to get to that instead of the first part.
Because you spent 15 seconds not answering the
can I just give the
question.
explanation without you interrupting me?
Please
Can I
start
just
with the
give the
explanation.
Okay.
Wait, let's just calm down there. Please
I'll
start
just
with
give
the explanation that I
I'll just give the
asked
explanation
for.
no context. I'll just give the explanation no context.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
You know, it arrives at this because when we have this relevant X, which is let's say the statement that the state, but I lost my train of thought. The statement that we are not thinking, right? If we don't have grounds, right, aka God, this is just immediately going to collapse into circularity because it's only going to reference the entities that's in the statement, which would be that I can, or I am not thinking, or I cannot think.
Do you know what the
right?
liar's paradox is? What do you think the liar's paradox is?
This sentence is false.
Where did that appear in your explanation?
I said it's a liar's paradox / self-referential schema.
The liar's paradox appeared literally nowhere in your explanation. This is how I know that you're saying things that you have no idea about, because you like to invoke terminology in hopes that the opposition doesn't know what it is. I'm sorry, I have a bachelor's degree in mathematics. I'm quite familiar with the liar's paradox, which is how I know that you have no idea what you're talking about. It literally has nothing to do with what you're talking about. And invoking terminology that you don't know is just going to hurt your credibility, because the people that do know about it are going to recognize it and recognize that you have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, so yeah, you didn't understand this. Okay. So when I say a self-referential schema, as in the hold on, when I say that self-referential schema, as in the liar's paradox, right? The liar's paradox represents is the most popular self-referential schema. You didn't understand that. It's the notion behind the liar's paradox that I'm presenting here. When you say that doesn't have the liar's paradox in it, maybe you're talking about, it doesn't have the liar or, this sentence, but it follows the same construct of the self-referential schema. You said I didn't know what I'm talking about, but then you asked me what the liar's paradox is. I tell you what the liar's paradox is.
And that had nothing to do with the explanation you gave, which demonstrates that you were just throwing it in there.
You got some monologue. May I get mine?
Did you tell me to drop the monologue? That's funny. That's actually like super hilarious.
That was a monologue. You said I didn't know what I was thinking. You had a bachelor's degree, and that I'm using words I don't know.
You think I'm the one monologuing? You sound frantic. Calm down.
Dude, can I explain? You just
Wait, so what we're going to do, I'm just going to ask you. My understanding of your argument is that you're saying if there's no God, that is like a personal ultimate explanation, then it's going to collapse into, circularity or an infinite regress. Why?
Okay, let's just do this one simple time. Okay, that's all I'm asking.
Yeah.
Elias paradox, right? That embodies a self-referential schema. I'll say the analogy I'm going to give you. I won't use any arbitrary language. embodies the self-referential schema, right? The self-referential schemas just go in an infinite regressive statements without coming to a truth. If
Okay.
there
Why
is
does that
no
follow
God,
from
the
God's
foundation lies.
non-existence?
Oh, yeah. I was just about to get to that. Just about to get to that. That God.
Yeah,
If there
please.
is no God to okay. If there is no God to foundationalize this, right, and you say ordain or permit, right, then we get in this infinite regress via the self-referential
Why couldn't
schema.
something else be the
Now, God as
foundation?
the internal. Wait, hold on.
Why
God as
couldn't
the
something else
external
be the
entity.
foundation is the
Hold
question.
on. May I finish?
I'm
May
sorry,
I
I
finish,
must
please?
have launched the unskippable cutscene. I guess we're in it for the long haul. But my
I
question, to
was
be clear, is
literally
why
in the
can't
middle of
something
the
other than God be the
explanation,
metaphysical
and you're
foundation?
monologuing
Also,
about me
and
monologuing.
allow me to ask a
You're
clarifying
monologuing
question. I
about
want to
me
make sure that
monologuing in the middle of my
I'm
explanation.
tracking the conversation appropriately. So, for those of us who didn't study philosophy, I want to make sure that I'm at least understanding this. Are you suggesting that like all self-references are somehow invalid?
All self-referential statements are the one I'm presenting to you is invalid. I don't know about all. That doesn't. I don't know
So,
what you
I
mean by
mean,
all.
listen, this is going to be a kindergarten question, and I promise you this is a kindergarten question, but like, would we say like, I think, therefore I am? Is that not a self-referencing statement?
I don't
So
think
yeah, that's
so.
just on the positive.
Okay.
No, because so the proposition like I think I don't think the proposition I think is referencing itself.
So how does I believe not reference itself? How, I mean, I guess I'm missing the problem with the self-reference.
So okay, I feel like this would be easier to see with like formal notation. But actually, I don't know. I think this is probably going to get too into the weeds. No, I'll go for it. Fuck it. I'm in too deep anyway. So imagine an x, and x is equivalent to the proposition I think. Well, like x just doesn't appear in the proposition. But if let's say we take a different proposition. Let's say we have x, and x is equivalent to not x. The liar's paradox. This statement is false. This statement is false is self-referencing because this statement appears in the statement itself. In the same way, in like the formal logic, x is equivalent to not x. X appears in both sides of it. If I hope I didn't lose anybody. But that's why like I think therefore I am. It doesn't make any reference to like, I think this statement. That would be a self-reference.
That makes more sense. I was confused. I'm like, why is it improper to reference yourself in the proposition? That makes a little bit more sense now.
Yeah. I also have no idea what self-reference even has to do with this, to be honest. Like I'm genuinely clueless as to what the argument is. And I think that probably makes three of us.
Okay. Maybe you're not informed of the self. Okay, so like, are you aware? Like, I don't know if this was like a common video, but Steve Patterson explained this multiple times. I'm pretty sure there's multiple papers on it. That the self-referential or the self-reference schema, most commonly known as or most commonly used, the liar's paradox, it regresses infinitely because we have to assume what sentence is false, and then that's just gonna go on infinitely.
But I don't know how we get to self-reference. Like I agree self-reference is probably a problem. I have genuinely no clue what it has to do with the denial of God. I don't know why my beliefs become like self-referential if I deny God.
Well, hold on. When we say we have certainty, we say we rely on X for certainty. Certainty is the foundation for our beliefs. And I'm just saying this certainty or this X is going to, it's going to derive from not X, right? We're just going to derive not X if the liar paradox is true, and that just collapses your certainty.
Okay. But how does that follow from God's non-existence? So take me through. So step one, God doesn't exist, then what?
Step one, God doesn't exist, then we just don't have intelligibility.
Why not?
If God doesn't exist, so we would say
that's the conclusion I'm hoping to arrive at. I'm looking to have like the intermediate steps filled in.
Yeah, the foundation for intelligibility is not X. So we would say it was initially X.
What
which
is X?
actually grounds it, right?
Where X is what?
Hold on.
You're just stipulating.
Okay,
Wait, you threw in
so-
a variable without defining it. What is X meant to represent?
I literally just defined it prior. I said X is intelligibility, right? Or no, the foundation for intelligibility. My bad. Logic, right? We use to foundationalize these intelligible things, right? And then
Wait, so X is logic or knowledge?
Not X.
Let X be the question. You're not answering X.
Okay, I explained this prior, and then I just explained it. But okay, I'll explain it one more time. X is a logic, not X. Just negation, right? Like, hopefully you know what the negation is. Please tell me what the negation is.
Yep, X is logic, and then not X is not logic.
Okay, so when we say we have no God, right, we go to say not X is true. And
why the fuck? Wait, what? Why? That doesn't follow.
Okay, because we arrive at the liar's paradox, which defeats that.
Why? Oh, so God doesn't exist. Therefore, the liar's paradox is what? True?
We would just say the liar's paradox is problematic to say, if like we would just like say if this sentence, right, it would conjure up the sentence. By the way, I keep using the liar's paradox. I'll just say self-referential schemas, right? It defeats X because we would say X grounds in, we would say like bivalence and things like that. So to say, the liar's paradox, it permits not X because it goes against one of the axioms. And all I mean by logic.
Wait, why couldn't something else be the foundation?
You said what?
Why couldn't something other than God be the foundation?
I solved this problem. This is what I say you're not tracking. So the qualities met,
I must not be.
I implicitly said earlier, that's all I define God to be.
As what?
That's literally the qualities that ground, right? You would say not X, right? That's all I just define God to be.
Wait,
I don't know
so then
what
you're
you
just
mean,
defining God
why
into
we expect it to be
existence. You're
God.
literally just saying like God is the necessary preconditions for knowledge because I define him to be. So to be clear, you don't take any stance on if God has a mind or if God created the universe or if God did any of that?
Well, you didn't understand earlier, so...
Can I just get a yes or a no to that question? I don't want another unskippable ramble. I just want the yes or the no at this point.
You're asking me to answer again, and it's redundant.
Fuck, it's another unskippable cutscene.
If you were listening, you would understand it.
We're not going to get the yes or the no.
I just want
In
to be
fact,
clear,
he probably didn't even listen to the question. Holy fuck.
Understand it.
No way he listened to the question.
So you don't understand it. But I'll give another answer. I'll give another answer because obviously you're not going to stop.
Is the answer going to include a yes or a no?
Sure, but I'm gonna reference the explanation prior. So
we're gonna need a yes or no though.
I do hold a position. Hold on. Yes, I do hold a position, but it's contingent, right? It's if. So we would say X is yes, and then we would just say it's a conditional for X. That's the answer.
So you can't say yes or no.
Wait, actually, wait. Don't even tell him. Do you remember what the question was?
If I hold like beliefs on like, if God created the universe, if God has a mind.
So and the answer to that question is yes, or is it what?
Well, yeah, I said we represent the question, right, as an X, and then I just say conditional X. So we would say if, if these things are satisfied.
Could you imagine having dinner with this guy? Hey, would you like some salad? Well, if X, it's just a yes or no.
Let Y represent you and X represent the salad. Let Z represent desire. X, Z, Y.
Yo, this rhetorical bout is doing nothing for the argument. You asked for a question.
Well, substituting a variable in for logic does nothing to the argument.
I gave you the answer. And then you
go calm down there, mouth breather. What's the answer to the question? Do you think that God created the universe? Or no? Do you think God has a mind or no?
Okay, so I gave you the answer. But I'll give you the again.
No, we're waiting for a yes or no.
What's the answer, yes or no?
Yeah.
I don't know what it means to just answer yes. Maybe we can model it.
I don't know what it means.
You don't know what it means? Did he say he doesn't know what it means to say yes?
It was easy to model things.
I don't know what it means to say yes.
Ian, do you believe that there was a mind that created the universe?
No.
Oh, that was easy. All right, now, Dave, do you believe that there was a mind that created the universe?
I answered this already. You're gonna get the same answer. Like this yes and no bout is not gonna happen. I don't even go by.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
he answered this
So you can't
already.
say yes or no.
Let X be the answer and Y be the set of things that have already happened. X is present within Y.
I gave you these symbols for my answers. Okay. I answered your question, right? I already gave you context. I don't know what it means.
You certainly
to say
didn't.
yes.
It's a yes or no
conditional.
question.
Somebody who had a strong position would just say yes or no.
Let
Okay,
X be
you
a
can believe
dodge
that.
and
I
Y
agree
be
you
the
believe that.
question.
We
You're
disagree on
Xing
belief
Y
here,
right
so I agree you
now.
believe that. Yes. You said what?
Let
Oh,
X
what's
be
the
a
answer?
dodge and Y be the question. You're Xing Y right now.
If you think I'm dodging, that's perfectly fine. I already explained it to you. If you cannot deal with a conditional,
I just want the yes or the
then I don't know
no.
what you're doing in these debates.
I just want the yes or the no.
Well, I already told you my answer. I don't know what it means to say yes if it's not a conditional. So
What?
So you can't answer yes or no questions?
Like I repeated earlier.
Wait, are you a child rapist?
You're not able to understand my
Wait,
position.
so, Dave.
Where I'm coming from when you're asking.
Dave, are you a child rapist?
You said what? Wait, repeat that?
Are you a child rapist?
No.
Oh.
Oh, that was
fuck.
easy.
Well, it seems
I
like
was
you
waiting
can't
for
answer
X.
yes or no.
Oh, easy enough.
Well,
Wow.
I guess
We're
we're
still
saying no
waiting.
to certain questions, and this is why I also said earlier.
Yeah, I can say no to the
contextually,
questions that I have
you know what?
definitive
Wait,
answers for. I
hold on.
certainly can't
You know
say
what
yes or no to
context means?
questions I don't have an answer for.
Okay, this is so moronic. This is like the stuff Dark Dawkins does. He draws you into a yes or no on a dumb question. Obviously, this
It's not a dumb
tactic does not
question.
work.
It's not a dumb question. Ian's attempting to define what you mean by God, right? So, for example, if you mean God, like the
Not what
creator
he's
of all
asking.
things, that's really
That's not
interesting.
what he's asking.
If you
I
mean
initially
God
gave
like
my
a
definition of
naturalistic,
God when I presented the.
if you mean God like a naturalistic force, like a deistic force that just happens to ground all things, but doesn't think, doesn't create, that kind of nonsense, that's important information to know. Like, we need to know actually what you believe so that we can engage with what you believe, which is why Ian asked you a really easy question about what you believe, and you're refusing to tell them.
I initially wait. He's not asking me directly what I believe. He's giving me a choice to pick on what I believe. That's completely different. And I initially told him this. I initially gave him this answer, right? God, right? To say you know X, right? That's saying God grounded this. That's saying he's committed that action.
God.
And they're like arguing about
Yeah.
this to say God
Holy
committed this
shit.
action.
Let me ask you a question, Dave. Do you believe in a specific God that you know characteristics about?
Yes.
Okay. Can you define any of those characteristics for us?
I defined them for the third time for you. Sure. The characteristic of God is
hold on.
Right?
Hold on.
Hey, you asked me a question, can I answer?
I just needed a yes or no. I asked you a yes or no question. So you are capable of defining the characteristics of your God, which is fine. I know, and that's all I needed was the yes. I didn't need anything after that. Okay. So if you're capable of defining characteristics of God, are you capable of defining if one of the characteristics is that your God has a mind?
If my God has a mind?
Okay, so he can't.
Me saying, but, okay, sure, that could be
He doesn't know.
Sure.
Okay, so your
sure.
God has a mind.
That's perfect. Why would I think that the only foundation for intelligibility would be mental? Why would I think that?
Well,
specifically for like, let's take like logic, for example. Why would I think that a mind is the only sort of thing that could ground logic?
I don't need the monologue. I don't need the monologue, okay? Can I explain?
It wasn't even a monologue, it was a question.
I'll give it again. I just gave the answer, I'll give it again. Okay?
He's short-circuiting.
Yeah, somebody hit the red button on the back of this dude.
I just gave the answer.
They hit the reset
I'll
button.
give it again. Did you not listen to that? So
It's the sound I make before I'm about to dodge the question.
God has a mind, or this foundation has a mind, is because for us to, or we could just create a schema, right? A self-referential schema. So we would say that's derived when our action is. For X have a mind, or we didn't know we have a mind, we have to say there's something grounds that, right? We would say God attributes the thing he grounded. There you go. God has a mind. That's the thing that's defined as the foundation.
Yeah, but why would I think that it's impossible for a non-mental foundation to ground laws of logic?
I just explained it. I don't know what
No, you didn't.
all you have to do is put the negation there.
Oh.
I just explained it. I'm
Oh,
not gonna
just
explain
not
it
my
again if you didn't
position.
understand.
Fuck. Ah, brilliant.
It solves everything.
Yeah. Let X
Like
equal
okay,
God,
you could add the
not
negation.
X.
You could add the negation. You can add the negation, and you'll get your answer.
How about you do that?
Well, you asked a question, and I'm telling you the way to get the answer.
I don't
Because I
want the
already gave
fucking
you my.
formula. I don't want the goddamn cheat sheet to decode the answer. I just want the answer.
Well, I gave you the answer. You didn't listen to what I just said. I said I gave you my answer, but if you want a different answer, you just have to
Yeah,
add the
I
negation.
want you to answer the
So-
question. Why would it be impossible
I
for a
just answered the
non-mental
question. I answered the
foundation to
question already.
ground logic?
So
Why would
here's
that be the
what's going to
case?
happen, Dave. We've had you up for 45 minutes. If you don't give them a direct answer, we're just going to move on to the next two callers who've been waiting patiently.
You've been dodging this entire time. I gave him the answer, but sure, I'll give you right the answer you want. Sure. So the reason why we would think the contrary, right, it's not possible, is because we would say that these things called minds do exist for us to for us to contradict this, right, or to say it doesn't exist. I would arrive in another self-referential schema. So God has to be one of the things that ground this.
Why? There's still a foundation. It's just not mental. Why would that be self-referential?
Yes, to say that we doubt, I mean,
We
like,
doubt that God exists where
self-referential.
God is the mental foundation. We accept the non-mental foundation.
Well, I just told you, but yeah, the reason for that is because when we say that God grounded X, and you know what I'm saying, a mind, right, is needed. You can say it's one of our derivable like axioms or things we consider like axioms, right? And obviously the reason for that, hold on, I'm getting a call. Yeah, and the reason for
It's
that
probably
is
Jesus, and he's
because,
calling you to tell you to hop off. You're doing a bad job.
Right. I have a question though. Just make sure I'm not misremembering. At the beginning of the call, Dave, did we ask you if you believed in the Christian God?
No, you did not.
Do you believe in the Christian God?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh boy. Well, do we want to waste any time on the Trinity, or should we move on to the next guest?
I think that would be fun. Listening to this guy explain the Trinity.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, how is it not three gods?
Say that again?
Yeah, I'm a person, you're a person, Justin's a person. We'd have three people there. Jesus is God, the Father is God, the Holy Spirit is God. Seems like three gods.
Are you trying to get like a logical problem to like the Trinity? Like,
Yeah.
like as a Trinitarian, I would just say that three people, one essence. Simple as that.
Yeah, but that's a problem, right? Let's take the Greek gods. They all have the divine essence. Hera has the divine essence. Athena has the divine essence. Zeus has the divine essence. But it's three gods. So likewise, Jesus has the divine essence.
I don't believe,
the Father has the divine
don't believe
essence. The Holy Spirit is the divine essence. That's three gods too, it seems.
Hold on. Can I ask you a clarifying question? Okay,
Yeah.
so like when you say that the Greek gods have X, and they're not, and they're like anti-triomny. I don't believe in the Greek gods, so I don't understand the relevance. I don't think the Greek
just
gods,
because we would count them three, despite the fact that they all share the divine essence.
What's the reason? I wasn't finished my question. I don't believe the Greek gods, etc. So I'll just ask you for the relation. That's it.
Yeah, the relation is just that they share the divine essence in the same way that the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit share the divine essence. You're saying that the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit aren't three gods, because they all share one divine essence. But then, Athena, Hera, and Zeus are three gods, but they share a divine essence.
Well, again, you're just using like the label. What do you mean by divine essence?
Well,
are you trying to say it's the same as ours?
What do you think essence is?
The property of being divine.
Well, hold on. I just told you I don't believe in them, so I don't even know or believe if they have essence. That's why I asked you.
No, we're not.
What do you?
We're not
think
asking you about the Greek gods. We're asking you when you said that they share in the divine essence. We're trying to clarify what you mean by essence.
I'm asking you a question. Wait, you offered up an argument, right?
Well, we're
Or it's like
asking
a
about a word
counterfactual,
that
like
you brought into the conversation. It sounds like there's some trouble under the meaning of the word essence, right? So I'm asking you to define, when you say essence, what do you mean?
That has nothing to do with my question. My question is to understand the correlation between
Yeah.
essence
He-
and the way
he
you mean as the
knows
Greek
that
pantheon or whatever.
Defining
Like,
essence is
I
going
don't
to
know
be a
what that
problem
means.
for
Now
him.
you're asking me what I mean by essence.
So
I don't really.
we're not asking you to define the Greek gods. The Greek gods have been brought in
That's
as
not
just
what I said.
an analogy for how the essence can be shared in three independent persons, right? Now you're suggesting that the Greek gods don't share the same essence, which is why I'm
That's not what
asking,
I'm
what
saying.
do you mean by essence?
Wait, that's not what I'm saying at all. All I'm
I mean,
asking
I can
you
just give you a
is,
Google definition if you want.
okay, like
I
I
mean,
asked you a question
do you know?
before you're asking me the questions and you just wanted answers. I asked the question first, so I'm asking for a response first, right? When you say they share the
I
same
didn't hear
essence,
your
what do
question
you mean by
because
their essence?
before we can move on to, that's what we're trying to
Yeah,
define.
it's the divine essence. They share the divine essence.
So again, it was your claim
I
that
asked you
the
what that
three
means.
persons of the Trinity share a divine essence, which is why we're trying to
I
clarify
said they
what it
share the
means
same
to
essence.
have essence.
Hold on. Hold on. I said I said they share the same essence. Then you say the
Right.
Greek pantheon shares, this divine essence. That's why I'm asking you,
Right.
what does that mean?
Yeah. So
Yeah, that
Can
means
you
they all
we're
have
define
the
what the
asking
divine
you.
property.
essence is?
They all fit the essential characteristics of being divine.
Yeah. So my understanding of
That's
essence
incredible.
from 12 years of Catholic education is that essence are the indisputable properties.
Yep, that's exactly right. It's just like the properties where if the thing exists, it has these properties. And if you took away one of the essential properties, then that thing would no longer be that type of thing. It would become something different. If you have a chair and then you take away one of its essential properties, let's say you took away all the legs or you blew it up, you don't have a chair anymore.
So what that means is that all you need to share in the divine essence is to have all the intrinsic properties of a God. You can't be lacking one of them. So if an intrinsic property of God is that, I don't know, that you're like all knowing, then we would expect that that's an intrinsic property. And if you lacked it, you wouldn't be counted as a God. So when we talk about essence, we're just talking about characteristics, qualities. You understand? Oh, he dropped.
Oh, gosh.
That's
I bet
hilarious.
Jesus called again and was like, seriously, dude, you got to get the fuck off.
Literally all it took was turning to the thing that he knew was illogical, and he started stuttering and stammering really fast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gosh. How long did he last on the Trinity?
Maybe 2 minutes max.
I think, yeah. Gosh.
Yeah.
We
I
got
do love asking theistic philosophy people about the Trinity because I think they inherently know that it's problematic.
yeah.
But is it not a self-referential schema? I'm just joking.
The weird thing about the Trinity is that there's like a couple of ways that like I think you could make sense of it, but then they're all heresy. Maybe you could make sense of it like, each one is like a third of God, but you can't do that. Or maybe you would say like they're
partialism is
different.
heresy.
Yeah, or maybe you'd say like they're different modes of God, in the same way.
Definitely not
like,
modalism.
It's modalism. It's heresy. Fuck. And it's like, well, if those
Or
ones
you
are
can get
out,
burned at the stake.
yeah, I just have no idea. I have no idea what the Trinity means if it's not one of those.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's grab our next caller. It's going to be Peter calling from Pennsylvania. Says, I want to refute that God isn't good because he doesn't cure cancer. Well, Peter, you're on the line with Justin and allegedly Ian. We appreciate your patience for waiting in line as long as you have. Can you put a little kind of some legs on your argument for us?
I mean, I just want to say that was torture listening to you guys for like 45 minutes. Another guy going back and forth like that off 30 different topics.
Sorry about that.
Not a good idea for an online show either.
Well, that's the thing is, some people really love philosophy. And for those people, that was a really good conversation, right? And so the reality is, not every discussion's everyone's cup of tea. Like I love to get into the weeds on biblical interpretation and whatnot. And, for some people, they hate it. They find it boring, right? So, we try to itch everybody's tickle. So Let's go ahead
Yeah, I
and,
mean, I
and
like
talk about your
philosophy too,
argument.
but it's harder when the other guy doesn't necessarily can't articulate that. So you're kind of spending 45 minutes hearing someone sort of napping off on something and sort of that's fine, it's whatever. But the point I heard you guys speaking earlier about suggesting that a god wouldn't be good if he doesn't cure cancer or something like that. Is that
Sure.
is that
Yeah.
accurate?
Yeah.
That doesn't really follow though. Like if let's say you can donate to my child's college fund, that's good. But it doesn't mean that you're not good for not doing that though. Because you have no obligation to do that.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. I think this dives directly into a question of moral responsibility. What does it take for somebody to be morally responsible? Well, what it takes, the way we evaluate how responsible somebody is by answering the question, how easy would it be for this person in these circumstances to do the right thing? If it's extremely easy for you to do the right thing, then you're extremely responsible. But if it was like very hard for you to do the right thing, maybe you have like cognitive limitations that make it impossible for you to recognize concepts like right or wrong. Maybe you're like terrified in this situation, so you can't actually perform the action. Maybe there's like a bear like chasing a kid down the street, but you're horrified, so you keep on fucking up. Like when you try to call 911, you keep on entering it wrong. But we would say that you're less morally responsible, even though you didn't do the right thing, calling the police or calling like animal control. We would say you're probably less morally responsible insofar as it was hard, maybe even impossible for you to do the right thing given the circumstance. For God, it's trivially easy. God wants it to happen, therefore it happens. That's how easy it is. Whereas if it was trivially easy for you to support somebody's college fund and you didn't do it, we probably would say that you're responsible for that, assuming that there's like an obligation that this person like ought go to college. If you had the cure for cancer, it would be trivially easy for you to give it to somebody and you don't give it to them. Well, you're maximally morally responsible for that and you did the wrong thing. So, you did wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with your sort of idea of obligation. Like either something has an intrinsic obligation or it doesn't. It doesn't necessarily come from anything. Like if I have obligations because I'm a human being, not because of anything about the world or anything like that. It's just what I have as a part of my purpose or function as a human being.
Am I intrinsically obligated to cure cancer?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Am I intrinsically obligated to cure cancer?
You as a human being have intrinsic obligation to other human beings. So that means sort of when you have the ability to sort of like help a human being who you're supposed to take care of or something like that, and you don't do that, then I could say that you were wrong for doing that. I can't say that you're wrong for not paying for my kid's college fund, even because you have no obligation whatsoever. Even if it was easy for you to do, and even though it's good for you to do, it's not wrong for you to not do that.
You think it's not wrong to not do the right thing? Or I'm sorry, you don't think it's wrong? Or actually, no, I did say it right. So is that correct? You don't think that you've done something wrong if it would be really easy for you to do the right thing and you don't do it?
If it's good, no, I don't think it's wrong. It depends on what it is, though. But like, you don't have.
You don't think it's wrong to not do good, even though it would be extremely easy to do good? Really?
Yeah. Can I ask a follow-up question on that? I just want to make sure I'm clear.
Like I said, my college example is one of them. There's plenty of billionaires who could pay my
hold on, Peter.
Tuition.
I just want to, Peter. I just want to make sure I'm clear in your position. Okay. So, like, I'm a parent, right? If my son, let's say, for example, my son, got bit by an animal, right? And let's just say that he got some transmittable disease from the animal. It could be fatal, right? It could kill my son, right? Now I call my doctor. My doctor says, "Hey, we've actually got a shot. If you bring him in this week, we'll give him the shot and he'll be fine." If I choose not to bring him in to get the shot, did I act wickedly?
Yeah, because you had a responsibility for your child to do that. You had an obligation as a parent, and the doctor even has the obligation to sort of treat your child.
Why? No, why do I have an obligation though?
Simply because you're his friend. That's your role as a parent. That's what you have as a parent.
What provides the obligation? What about being a parent provides that obligation?
That's just the role of being a parent. That's the role intrinsic to being a parent.
So you've just defined it then. You've defined it into existence.
Well, I mean, I'm just aware of it, right? I'm a parent, right? I don't
So
create those
I actually think
I'm
that's
just
the wrong
aware that I have
answer.
those obligations.
I think that's the wrong answer.
Was that?
I don't
Well, I
think
mean, it's the right, I'm a parent.
I don't think
know
it's
I have obligations. I
intrinsic
didn't create
to
them. I didn't
don't
make them.
think it's
Nobody made them for
intrinsic
me.
to being
You
a
didn't make them for me.
parent
Nobody
that
else
you
made them for
have
me, right?
obligations. I think that's something that we make as people in a society. Like as a society,
Yes,
we decide that
reject
we
it.
have
It's
obligations
either
towards our
self-evident or
children.
it's not. Like
I'm not asking
either
you about a social
I didn't even
expectation.
take
I'm
it.
asking you like an actual like meta question here about like where do obligations come from, right? If they come from society, then they're just kind of subjective, right?
I mean, they don't. They come from the intrinsic nature of being human beings. So we are created with certain obligations.
All right.
certain
So
moral
what about the intrinsic
and we're
nature of
aware
human
them as human
beings
beings. They're self-evident
requires
to us.
me? What about the intrinsic nature of a human being requires me to make sure my son gets the shot?
Because you're a human being and who's a parent and you have that responsibility. It's just something you're
But
aware of.
where does the
Like,
responsibility
it's
come
self-evident.
from? It's not self-evident. That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah.
Well, it's self-evident to me, right? I mean, what do you mean it's not
I'm
self-evident?
asking
Like, I'm
you
a
a
parent,
question
I
I
have an
already know the
obligation. You're
answer
saying it
to.
came
I'm
from
hoping
somewhere.
that
I'm
you're going
telling
to
you
get to the right
self-evident. I'm aware
answer
of
as
it
well.
without any choice
So
of
the
creation
reason
of
why
my
I'm
own.
asking you is not because I don't think there's a good answer. It's because I think your answer is bad.
Yeah.
Well, it's like this. It's like this, right? I can't deny I don't have an obligation to my children. If I did that, I would literally be delusional. It's like sort of denying. It's sort of like saying there's no other minds that exist, or that
Why
I
would that
don't
be a
exist.
false belief in your
You can
view?
understand. You can understand. I think you can
But-
understand that self-evident,
But
right?
that's a moral that comes from your mind, and I assume you don't believe that morals come from human mind, do you?
Well, I'm saying the morals that come from I'm aware of it because I'm a
Okay,
human
so
being. I have an
what's the
obligation. I can't
metaphysical
deny that. I can't pretend
foundation
it's not there. I
for
can't
the
pretend that
moral
anything can
claim
change
that
that.
a parent is obligated to do what's in the best interest of saving their children's lives?
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, what's the metaphysical explanation for why I have an obligation as a parent? Because it's not self-evident. Just calling it self-evident doesn't make it self-evident.
Mhm.
I mean, it's not self-evident too. It's not self-evident to you, or it's not self-evident to me.
It's
Oh,
not
well-
self-evident in terms of having an explanation.
I was just gonna say, right? Like, if
Okay,
it's
let-
self-evident
let-
to me
let-
that
let me
God
ask you-
doesn't
let me ask you a
exist,
que- let me ask you a question.
is that like the end of the
Can anyone-
conversation? Do I not have to justify
Right.
that?
Yeah, calling something self-evident isn't
can I ask
actually
you
an
a question?
answer. Calling something self-evident is just an admission that you don't have an answer. But
Yeah.
I'm hoping you have an answer. So I can tell you in my
Well,
framework. So in my framework, the
Okay.
reason why you would be evil if you denied your child the life-saving shot is because you would be causing harm in doing so. In fact, you wouldn't just be causing harm, you'd be causing unnecessary harm. And I personally believe that when we cause unnecessary harm, we're doing bad, we're doing evil, right? Now, in your worldview, that doesn't seem to be the case. You're just saying, well, it's self-evident that you have to do that, but self-evidence isn't a thing.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you think that the person you're accusing of doing something evil? Do you believe they have a moral obligation not to do that?
Wait, sorry, what's the scenario?
The person you're calling evil for causing harm or whatever. Are you stating that person has a moral obligation not to do that?
In my worldview, I have a framework. Now, to be fair, my framework is subjective. Ian's got an argument for an objective atheist framework, but in my subjective framework, I'm more of a utilitarian. I don't believe that when we cause unnecessary harm, we're doing good. Now, I'm assuming that you've got something that I don't, right? If you think that there's some sort of metaphysical foundation for my obligation to save my son's life, I'd love to hear it, because it sounds like your argument is coming down to subjective morals that derive from the mind of men.
Well, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that when I say someone is doing something immoral, I'm saying they're doing something contrary to their obligations as a human being.
Right, but I'm asking
or
you,
in their role as
where
a
does
parent,
the
I could say to
obligation
cop, I
come
could say to-
from?
or anybody else.
Yeah. Why ought? Gosh, not to
this is the
substitute the
is-ought
scenario,
problem
but
here.
there's a great paper by Peter Singer that lays out this exact question, this exact scenario. Let's say you're walking next to a lake and you see like there's like a kid drowning in the lake, no relation to you, by the way. But you're like, fuck, like I just got these new pants, they're $20. I don't want to save this kid, it would ruin my pants. So then you walk away. Did you do something wrong there?
Yes, because I had an obligation to save that child, and I did it.
Why? Why did you have that obligation?
I don't know. I mean, even if I don't know the cause of it, even if let's assume that I don't know.
How do you know that
I'm
you
not
have
trying
the
to sort of
obligation
justify the
then?
cause of it.
That's
Well,
what I'm trying to
just saying
figure out.
I can know I have an obligation without knowing why I have that obligation. That's possible,
Okay,
right?
can I know that God is evil?
Logically possible, right?
Can I know that God is evil without knowing why God is evil?
I mean, what would you even mean by evil at that point, though?
Just
You're
that
using the
he's
word evil, but you don't
disposed
know
to
what the word
acting
evil
in
means,
ways
right?
that are like distinctly vicious.
I mean, I don't even know what you're saying. Something like God is acting extremely vicious, but that I'm already thinking of like a little anthropomorphic entity sort of doing something at that
Well,
point.
I don't want to speak too much
correspond
for
to.
Ian, but I think we would both agree that when we talk about somebody doing evil, it's like causing unnecessary and undue harm.
I think that's a component to it. I think that there's more important things to it. But yeah, I definitely think that
matters.
matters.
But do you agree? I think you guys also ignore that one question I asked you, though. Anytime you cause anyone of committing evil, are you implying that they have a moral obligation to do otherwise? Yes or no?
No, because I'm a necessitarian. So, the way that I cash out more, whoa, let's just calm down there. There's really no reason to get upset.
Okay, if that is the case.
Let's just calm down. I don't know why we're interrupting. There's no reason to get upset. So, in terms of, on my view, what it requires to have moral responsibility, or the thing that I'd be criticizing is your reasons responsiveness. There's reasons for specific actions, and the question is, how responsive are you to these reasons for action? That's one of the key components. So that's how we derive moral responsibility, even if like determinism was true, is just based on whether or not your reason's responsive, and then we would criticize you for your lack of reason's responsiveness.
Okay, so let's put it this way. You already stated that like you're not just claiming that someone has a moral obligation when they do something evil. So let's say I did something evil, heinous, or whatever, right? And I have in your worldview, I might not have a moral obligation to do otherwise.
No, you do have a moral obligation to do otherwise.
So now you are stating that
to be like reasons responsive, to be more reasons responsive. That is right? The thing that you're obligated to do is to be more reasons responsive than you are.
More what?
And more reasons responsive. So moral claims give you reasons for action. So the way you critique somebody for their immoral conduct on compatibilism is by pointing out that they ought be more reasons responsive. They're failing to adhere to the reasons that they have for action.
Okay. Earlier when I asked you, when you accuse someone of doing something evil or morally wrong, are you claiming they have a moral obligation to do otherwise?
What I'm claiming is that they ought be more reasons responsive, which would lead them to do otherwise.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
Yeah, I've said this like 3 times. I'll say it a 4th. So what I'm claiming is that they ought be more reasons responsive. They ought be better at recognizing and acting on moral facts, which would lead them to do otherwise. That's the thing that we're critiquing. We're critiquing their lack of responsiveness to reasons.
When you accuse someone of having an ought, are you not accusing them of having an obligation? Or
they do have an obligation.
Okay, so then you would agree that when you say something is evil, but accuse someone of doing something evil, you are at least fundamentally implying that they have a moral obligation to do otherwise.
Can you repeat back to me what I've said to this 3 separate times, or were you not listening to it? Because I've answered. I'm about to give the answer a 4th time.
You're saying contradictory things. It's a yes or no question.
Peter, let's just calm down there. I asked you a question. I've already answered your question 4 times.
No, you didn't. You said
calm down there, Peter. There's really no reason to be getting upset right now, Peter. So I've answered this question. I've answered it a couple of times. I've given you the exact same. You are getting upset. You can hear the quiver in your voice. Just chill out.
Oh my God.
So in terms of my answer, it sounds like you're just not listening to it. Could you summarize back to me the answer that I've given? You keep asking the same question that I've already answered, and I suspect you aren't listening, and that silence is
I mean,
indicative
I
of the
just want a yes or
same.
no. I just want a yes or no answer.
Yeah,
Can
he
you
wasn't
give me a yes or no
listening.
answer?
He wasn't
If I
listening.
ask you again, can you give me a yes or no?
I'll give you
When
the
you
exact
accuse
same
someone
answer
of
that I've
doing
already
something
given you.
evil, okay, if you're not going to give me a yes or no answer, then I don't know where else to go. If you want to sit there and
Well,
sort
what
of,
you can do is repeat back to me the answer I've already given you. And I mean, I'd probably run away too, Peter. If I was in your stance, I would flee in a fucking hurry.
I'm not running away from anything. You're the one that's running away
You're
from yes or no
sprinting
question.
away. Just summarize back to me the answer that I've already given you. I've already answered your question multiple times. Were you listening to the answer or not?
You said when you choose someone of evil, you mean that they ought something about they ought not. I don't know, they ought not avoid the harm that they should have done or something like that. It was kind of long-winded.
Yeah, gosh, that wasn't my answer at all. You know, I bet Peter's setup probably looks something like this. You know, he asks the question, takes the headphones off, you know, dawdles a little bit so he can put the headphones back in at the end of it and then say, I asked the exact same question once more.
It's kind of pointless.
Yeah, I'd run away too.
Can I just let me just ask you one more time? Just one more time. We'll just start over again. Fresh start. I'll ask you one more time. When you accuse someone of doing something evil, are you implying that that person has a moral obligation to do otherwise? Yes or no? That's all I want.
What I'm saying, in some sense, yes.
You're not going to
yes,
give me
that
yes
is
or
what
no.
I'm. Yes, the answer is yes. In some sense, yes.
Yes. Okay. There you go.
Yes. In this, and let me elaborate on that answer. So my answer is yes. Whoa, calm down there, Peter. I know you're scared of the elaboration. Just chill out. So in the sense that I'm saying that they ought be more responsive to reasons, which would lead them to do differently had they been more reasons responsive. In that sense, yes, I am saying that they ought do otherwise because they ought be more responsive to reasons. They ought be better at recognizing the moral reasons that they have for action and then acting on them.
I mean, but
I know it's not on the script. Fuck, Darth Dawkins probably didn't put it in there. I'm sorry.
Has a moral obligation. Anytime you call someone evil, we're saying that they have a moral obligation to do otherwise, right?
I agree, Peter. I agree.
Okay. Do you think those obligations are placed on us by other human beings? Can I erase my moral obligations?
No, I don't think they're placed on you by other human beings. No.
Are they just a feature of being human?
They're a necessary component of agency.
Of being, whatever, a rational human being, whatever, a rational agent, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yes.
So then we're kind of in agreement that we have intrinsic moral obligations.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Do I have an intrinsic? Wait, is curing cancer? Whoa.
We both acknowledge I have it, right?
Whoa. Is curing cancer intrinsically good?
Yes, it's a good thing.
Oh, then God does a bad thing by not curing it.
No, because you're going back to does it have an obligation or not, though?
Well, you just said it was intrinsically good. You just said it was intrinsically good.
I said, yeah, I said it's intrinsically good.
So God doesn't do the intrinsically good thing.
Not to cure it, though, right?
Does God do the intrinsically good thing?
What was that?
Does God do the intrinsically good thing?
Yeah, wouldn't that fall under being all good? Is that you always do the most preferable thing?
No, that doesn't really mean what all good means here either, though.
What, do you believe in a God that's all good?
I believe in God's all good, but in the Thomistic understanding.
Well,
but it's not
if somebody was all good, wouldn't that mean that they always pick the best option?
If I tell you a clock is good, does that mean that a clock cures cancer?
No, it would mean that the clock would do everything that a clock could do perfectly.
Yeah.
So a God could do things that clocks couldn't do. So what I'm asking you, if God is all good, would God do all of his things perfectly?
That doesn't really follow. I mean, it perfectly
it does. Like, if you're all good,
all I mean by God is good.
Does that not entail that you always do the thing that's most preferred?
Not necessarily. I mean,
okay. So if you have the option of doing good, and you have the option of not doing good, and you're all good, how would it not follow that you do the thing that is good?
Yeah. What do you think it means for God to be all good? My understanding
knows?
of all goodness is that he just always does the thing that he has the most moral reasons to do.
It just means God is fully actual. There's no potential in him that's not fully
That's not what
realized.
all good means.
What the fuck?
What do you mean? Do you want to look up the Thomistic definition of good in pure actuality?
Purely
You never heard that
actual
definition for God?
has nothing to
Classical
do with whether or not you're good.
So you don't think God? Do you think God has like moral obligations?
Has nothing to do with being all good.
Do you think? I'm so sorry. I mean, we can like untangle your confused like philosophy mess in just a second. But are you saying you don't think God has like moral obligations?
No, God doesn't have moral obligations because obligations imply some type of authority that places those obligations on us.
So you wouldn't say that God ought not rape children?
God,
brutal.
No, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
God doesn't have an obligation to not rape children?
There's no
just
such
be clear,
thing as a God like a little creature going around that
the
can't
phrase all
that doesn't make any
good
sense.
traditionally is our English rendering of omnibenevolent. That's the traditional phrase that we provide for God, omnibenevolent, which means to be well-wishing, kind, or good. So if you're omnibenevolent, that means
if you want, you can use the chat. You can
you're
use
always
ChatGPT.
doing the thing that is kind or good or well-being. I'm not asking you about one person's opinion on what the word good means. I'm giving you just a definition of how it's been interpreted classically within Christianity.
The view of Catholicism, Eastern Orthodoxy. So what do you mean?
To be sure, if you're a Catholic, you believe that God is the Father, don't you?
We believe God, the
Jesus
God the Father,
taught you to pray
yes,
God the
that,
Father. Yeah. Okay, so
yes, that's just a little.
Are we His children? Are we His children? Are we His children?
What's that?
Are we His children?
Allegorically, sure.
Okay. Do parents have obligations?
Human parents do, yes.
So God doesn't have obligations then. So he's not a parent then.
There's nothing high. There's nothing higher than God.
The amount of phrases you have to equivocate on is crazy here.
Yeah. Before we
crazy bullets.
I said we have obligations. Obligations are.
In fact, the Bible tells you that God will give you everything that you need. It says He knows what you need before you even pray for it. He says, don't even worry about what you eat or what clothes you'll wear, because God will provide it for you. Yet He doesn't.
Yeah,
so the Bible tells you that God is going to give you what you need. Yet clearly, if the Bible thinks that God's going to give you what you need, wouldn't that mean He would give you the cure for cancer?
You're confusing two different things, though. Like someone can give me my children, pay off my college.
Why was Jesus healing sick people?
That doesn't mean you have an obligation to do it. God can do good things for people.
Why was Jesus healing sick people? I'm going to keep asking you to answer it. Why was Jesus healing sick people?
Because He could, and He wanted to.
Because He could, and it would be the best use of His time.
In that period, yes. Why not? He's a human being.
Would it be
going around healing people, trying to spread a message of?
Okay, so if Jesus could heal all those people and then He chose not to, would we still say that He's all good?
Yeah, He didn't have an obligation to cure everybody.
Was He better that He did, though?
Was He better that He did what?
Is it better that Jesus healed all those people rather than not heal them?
Is the world better off 2,000 years from now? Is like, I don't know.
You don't know.
I mean,
okay. He doesn't know if it's better to have cancer or not.
You're asking me to assign something is good to someone doing something temporally, as when the consideration is like all time or whatever. It's just, I mean,
Can you
I don't really
imagine like the cancer doctor who's watching over your child is like, oh fuck, what a moral quandary. I have no idea if curing this kid's cancer is good or not. Do you think God's perfectly rational?
What do you mean? A doctor is a temporal being having to do some type of temporal function in a particular algorithm to one particular patient. You didn't have to consider all of.
Do you think that answers my question?
What?
The question is God perfectly rational?
In addition, it doesn't make any sense for God to sit there and cure cancer if the world already has cancer in it, right? That's kind of self-defeating, right? Why make a world?
Yeah, he's too busy like fucking making like blood appear in the Eucharist.
And problem with it, right? And be his cosmic police force, right?
He's too busy like fucking tinkering away at like the flagellum, making like the perfect little sperm cells. I don't give a fuck about
I'm not a
cancer.
creationist, so I don't know why I'm not a creationist who
Yeah,
denies evolution. So I'm not sitting there thinking there's a
these
finger
things are
God that puts a finger
compatible.
and stuff. So
But
was
you
it
still haven't answered the question. The question is just like, is God perfectly rational?
God is all knowing?
Do you think that answers the
What does
question?
all knowing mean?
The question is
Was that
God perfectly rational? I can
you
elaborate. In
tell me
fact, I will. So perfectly
is being
rational
all
means
knowing
that
perfectly
God
rational?
only acts on the thing that he has most reason to do, and in the absence of a reason, God will not act. Is God perfectly rational?
Can you repeat that the definition again you
Yeah,
said earlier?
perfectly rational means that God acts on the things that he has the most reason to do, and in the absence of reasons, God will not act.
God, I mean, it's basically saying that if God doesn't have a reason to act, he's not going to act, right?
Yeah.
Sure. Why not?
Okay, sure. So then you would say that God has no reason to cure people of cancer? So there's nothing like intrinsically good about curing cancer insofar as it doesn't give anybody reason for action.
I don't agree with your definition of good. I mean, what you were saying about the whole reason for action thing. Remember what I said
You don't
is
think
that it
ethics are
stems from
normative?
obligations, right?
You don't, wait. Well,
Do
then
you
you
remember?
actually don't believe in obligations at all. If you reject that ethics are normative, that is reason giving, then you can't say that we ought do something because that's just saying that you have reasons for action. You can't say we should do
Well,
something because that's just
I'm
saying
not saying that though.
reasons for
I'm not
action.
saying
You
that
can't
though.
say we
You're
have
saying that. I'm not saying that we're
obligations
not
because
saying
these are
obligation though,
the
right?
necessary actions that we have reason to take. So if you're denying reasons for action, then you actually don't believe ethics are normative. You think that they're descriptive. So you actually can't say that you ought not rape
Yeah.
under your view of ethics
Well,
because that's
when I
saying that
say
you have a
ought not,
reason
I'm
to do
saying you're
that.
doing something contrary to your obligations.
So,
Ought makes legitimate sense, and when you're doing something contrary to your obligations and duty, right? If I say you're
but you
not
can
doing
use
what you have
ought
a
in
duty to
non-moral
do, then
ways, which is
ought
why
makes
it
sense in
means
light of that,
reasons
right?
for actions. So, for example, if you know that somebody's playing a chess game and they're one move away from checkmate, they just got to move the rook up, then you could say, if you want to win this chess game, you ought move your rook up. That's coherent.
Yeah, but in that sense, I'm speaking of a relative goal of that person playing chess. If he's like, I'm not trying to play chess, I was just trying to sabotage the game. The odd is nonsense, right?
So,
Like if
but
I'm
you
playing checkers with a
acknowledge,
chessboard and you go, hey, you're not moving it, you ought to move it like a chessboard. And I tell you, I'm
before we
not playing chess,
frantically change the
then your ought is
scenario,
invalid,
can
right?
you acknowledge that the usage of ought there is perfectly rational, which means that ought actually does mean reasons for action?
That's not that your ought is legitimate when a person has a relative goal and you're saying, hey, if you want to achieve X goal, you ought to do Y.
Hmm?
It's
So,
in that sense, it's relative to a subjective goal.
in other words, there's like a consideration that counts in favor of doing something. So we say
And that
people
is the
ought do
person's goal.
something when
In
we
your
say that
example,
there's
that's the
a
person's own personal goal.
consideration that counts in favor of them doing that, right? In other words, we say you ought do something when there's a reason to do it.
When I want, when it's a part of my goal, like me and you are on this call, and
Yes.
you're like, "Hey, don't curse at me. If you want to stay on this line, you better not drop f
Mhm.
bombs, right?" As long as, hello,
Hello?
sorry, hello, are you still there?
Yeah,
I'm not sure what happened.
that's okay. In terms of, so we're talking about reasons. So a reason is just a consideration that counts in favor of some sort of action. That's all a reason
Yeah,
is. So when you have a
I mean,
goal,
that
we say that
definition
you
is
ought
not
do
very
something
coherent to me.
insofar as there's like a means to a goal, like the chessboard. What we're saying
Yeah,
there
but
is that there's an
but
action
whose
that
goal is
you
it
have
though?
a consideration that counts in favor of. So, right, like we're playing chess, this one move will win you the chess game. That's a consideration that counts in favor of you making that move.
Only in light of the goal that I am trying to
Yes.
do, right? If I agree to play
Yes.
chess and I want to play chess, then it makes sense to say I ought to do X in light of that, right? Just like if I'm trying to travel to New York and you can sort of say, hey, you ought to go in this direction or not that direction. That makes perfect sense to you, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you're aware of this.
No matter what the goal is.
I'm not sure if you're aware of this fact, but the project of obligations is one that is meant to be, it's meant to have this like goal-oriented foundation insofar as it's trying to find a thing that everybody has reasons to do, insofar as there's like some goal that everyone is committed to. That's what the word obligation means.
Yeah, but
it's a categorical imperative,
goals,
a categorical
subjective goals,
you should do this. That doesn't make reference to any goals insofar as it's universal across everyone.
Yeah, but when we talk about goals, like relative goals, right? Those are not, they don't carry over all my life, right? Like if I want to play chess with you or do that, it's just momentary. I can easily sort of decide not to, and it's no longer my goal, right? Any of those goals I can freely sort of release.
When you say obligation, what do you mean?
I don't want to serve that goal.
Well, because I'm looking at, I've decided that I'm going to get a bit deeper on obligations. So I'm here on the Wikipedia page to get like a brief definition, and it defines it as an obligation is a course of action which someone is required to take. So it's saying that it's an action that you have like a reason to take.
Well, I'll use the analogy of like the legal system, right? You're a part of a state.
I don't want an analogy. I want a definition. How would you define an obligation?
Our government can place obligations on us, right?
That's circular.
What do you mean? Well, what I'm saying is
asking for a definition of obligation. The word appeared in the definition that you gave. I'm asking for a definition of obligation for the third time.
Okay, something someone has the responsibility or duty to do.
A duty. Well, okay. And what do we mean by duty? It's another normative
an
term.
obligation, I thought.
Yeah, it's an obligation. Yeah. If you want a fun, you were telling us to use ChatGPT. If you want a fun experiment, you should ask ChatGPT. Are obligations normative?
Which obligations, though? There are all sorts of obligations.
Just all obligations. Are obligations normative?
Sure. Yeah, they're all normative.
Yep, exactly. So it's all about reasons for action.
Yeah, but what is reasons for actions? Can you like explain that in a way that's very easy to understand?
Yeah. So from like a high level, reasons for action just mean like a consideration that counts in favor of doing some action. The way we would probably parse this out is that we would say that if you were like perfectly rational or like perfectly reasons responsive, then upon recognition that this is required to achieve your goal, that you should be motivated to do this.
Okay. I have an example for you, right? Let's say I want some quick money, some quick, easy money. I want to go buy a video game or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. I see you drop your wallet on the train. I can go ahead and take it, keep it, and have that extra money that I want.
Yep.
Do I have? Why should I not?
You ask me if you are?
Is there some goal? I don't have any goal. Let's say I have no moral obligations, or whatever you want to say. But tell me why. What obligation or whatever? How do you justify your whatever reasons for actions or whatever you?
So the scenario is like you're wondering why you should pay your debt back?
No, I'm saying why should I want that money so I can keep the money and you dropped your wallet. I could keep the money in your wallet. All right. That's easy money for me. Right?
Yeah.
I'm basically stealing your money, keeping it for myself, and using it to buy a video game.
Yeah, because at that point you have a contradiction in your view. You'd be willing contradictory ends. So you would both be willing that you should have the ability to have property while also stealing somebody's property, which undermines everyone's ability to have property. If everyone was just constantly running around stealing, if it's rational for you to steal, then it's rational for everyone to steal. So if everyone was always constantly stealing, then nobody would have any property. So the entire endeavor of stealing would be pointless because you wouldn't own anything.
Yeah, but me stealing your item is not going to cause, me stealing your money is not going to cause someone to steal it from me, right? If
I'm not
gonna
saying that
steal
it's going to
your-
cause
it doesn't-
that.
It's like an abstract thing, but it's not really going to happen, right? If you
I'm
were
not saying that
like,
it's
oh,
going
if
to
you
cause
steal,
that. I'm
then
saying
karma's
that
going to
you're
hit you
committed
back.
to contradictions.
That's not a
You're
contradiction.
committed
because I
to
don't believe in
saying
karma.
that property should exist and that also you're acting against the existence of property.
I'm not asking anything. I'm just wanting to keep the money so I can profit off the
In
money
this
that I have and
scenario,
buy
do you
something
think
that I
that
like with it.
people should be allowed to own property?
I mean, people can legally, they have a legal obligation to the property.
Just wait. I'm asking, in this scenario, would you think that people, would the person who's about to steal the money think that people should be allowed to own property? Because they'd have to be committed to both yes and
I mean,
no.
all
They'd have to be committed to
people
yes
have a
insofar as
legal
they
rights
want to own property, but they'd have to be committed to no insofar as they want to steal property away. So they'd be committed to a contradiction.
I mean, but I'll be acknowledging that they do have a legal right to that property. I didn't have any legal right to take that.
I'm not
and
asking
what I did was
legals. I'm
illegal.
asking morals.
Well, that's the only thing I don't. That's the only thing I believe that it's illegal to do, but I did it anyway.
Oh, well, then this is going to be super fucking easy. If you think that morality is just legality, well, then you're committed to saying that being a German in World War II, it would make it good to do the Holocaust.
No. Let's take one step further. Let's say I don't believe in morality. Let's say I am someone who thinks morality is just a religious.
Well, no. Under your standard, right? Under your standard, where morality is legality, you would agree.
That's not what I was saying. I wasn't saying morality.
That's exactly
is
what you
legality.
just
That's
said.
not what I was saying, though. That's not what I said. I said the only thing I'm acknowledging in your example is that it's illegal. I didn't say it's illegal and immoral, right?
Well, I'm only asking the moral question. Does the person think that people ought be allowed to own property?
I'm saying the person in this example, we could say he doesn't believe in morality at all. He thinks morality is a religious superstition.
Well, in that case, then he's committed to a contradiction.
Morality is just religious language. People talking about what God wants you to do and God-given obligations.
Yep. Well, in that circumstance, well, then there's just a direct contradiction in this person's worldview.
No, what's the contradiction? He doesn't.
Yeah,
he
the
doesn't
contradiction is that he
he
doesn't believe that people should be allowed to own property, and yet he wills himself owning property. He's saying that I should own this property, but also nobody should own property.
He's not even thinking of it in these higher level terms. He's just sort of thinking of it as it's illegal, but I'm going to do it because I want the money. And
and there's the contradiction that I just explicated.
What was that?
There's the contradiction that I just demonstrated.
Yeah, but you're saying he holds a belief, and that belief. What is that belief you're projecting onto him?
Well, the belief that he would have to hold is that he should be allowed to own this property, but also that nobody should be allowed to own property.
No, he doesn't believe he should be or anything like that. He's just taking it because it's easy for him to take.
Well, yeah, but in order to act intentionally, that means that you're acting towards some kind of goal. So he's saying that he has a reason to have this. That is to say that he ought have it. So he's saying he ought own it, which means that he ought be able to own it, obviously, because if you're not able, then you can't own it. So he's saying that he ought be able to own that wallet, but also nobody should be able to own anything insofar as he doesn't think that stealing is bad.
Yeah, that's just the projection on your part, because you're assuming that he's already trying to give a moral justification for his actions when he's not. His goal is simply, I want to make some easy cash. Your wallet fell. Oh, here goes the opportunity for me to take cash.
And there's a contradiction in his worldview.
That's not a contradiction.
Are you saying like?
Of a worldview onto him.
Are you saying like why should
You're
illogical people
what you want to sort
not
of justify
steal?
and explain onto him.
You're asking for a reason for why this person that doesn't give a fuck about reasons should do what he should do.
You're not giving a reason. You're sort of saying
correct?
he needs to believe in morality. That's basically what you're saying.
Well, what I'm saying is that he's already bought into it. He's already bought into the idea that people should own property.
He hasn't. You're projecting a scenario where
then why should he own this property? If people shouldn't own property, then why should he own this property?
He doesn't have to. There's no should. He just sort of.
Sure. Wait, then you just conceded that he doesn't have to. So then it's totally. So his action is irrational.
What do you mean? It's perfectly irrational. The reason he took it is sort of
he could sort of
use that money to go buy a video game.
But he doesn't think that he should be able to own it.
You don't think he has any legal right to it? Yeah.
No, we're not talking about legal rights. We're talking about moral rights. He doesn't think that he has any right to it. He has no moral right to it.
Again, you're projecting morality. You just admitted that. He doesn't believe in
I'm not
morality.
projecting
There's no
morality.
moral, right?
I'm saying that he's committed to
You're
these
projecting
things
morality
in
on him.
virtue of his agency.
Like I said, there's only legality here, right? He's legally not allowed to own it. There's no morality for him. He thinks morality is a
Whoa,
religious
wait,
superstition.
we're talking about morality. We're talking about how it's illogical what he's doing. And you've conceded that he's doing it for no reason.
No. It's not illogical though, right?
It is.
It's not illogical unless you.
Yeah, there's a logical
it's only
contradiction.
illogical when you project morality back onto him, though, right?
There's a logical contradiction.
Because there's only a logical contradiction when you project morality back onto him. When you
Nope,
start to say
there's
that
a logical
he is already
contradiction in his
justifying his
worldview.
actions as
His
morally
worldview
right.
has a logical contradiction in it. In his own worldview, he's
He
logically
doesn't-
contradicting himself.
So you're saying someone who thinks morality is a religious superstition has a contradiction in it?
Yeah, he's contradicting himself insofar as he's both saying
So
that he
you think
should
like
be
a mo-
allowed
you
to
think a
own
mo- you
this
think a
wallet,
motivist,
but
and
also
people
that
think
nobody should be
morality is
allowed to
just-
own anything. Yes, the belief that he should be allowed to own this wallet, which he would need to believe if it's a rational action for him to steal that wallet, he would need to believe that he ought be able to own that wallet. But also he's saying that nobody ought do anything. So that's a
So
contradiction.
you think people who believe in like moral error theory, which is pretty much your atheist position, which atheist philosophers describe like moral error theory, you think that's irrational?
I personally
believe
don't.
in
I
contradiction?
disagree with error theory. Yeah.
Well, you disagree with it, but do you think it's irrational to hold that position?
Yeah, I think it's irrational to be an error theorist. Yes.
Okay, but let's take it another way. Let's say I'm a religious person. I was raised religious. When I hear people talk about
Wait,
morality,
sorry. I'm not
they're
going to
all
let you
religious
pivot away from
people.
this. Can you just acknowledge the contradiction that it's a contradiction to say, I ought be able to own this wallet and say nobody ought to do anything? Do you acknowledge that that's a contradiction?
Not really.
You don't. This is what Christianity does to you, by the way. Anyone considering converting to
not really, because
Christianity,
it's my
these are the
personal goal,
dishonest
right?
bullets that
It's-
you're going to be forced into biting. You know, we just saw this
Crazy.
right here.
It's just like
No contradiction
want-
between, nobody ought to do anything and also I ought own this wallet.
That's wild.
So you're
Listen,
saying
Peter,
it's a
we've had you
contradiction
up
if you
for
don't treat that
43
as
minutes,
universal,
and
right? That's basically what you're saying,
we're
right?
running up on some hard time limits right now. And
Okay, but
exciting as
can
this
I get
conversation is,
one question though?
what we need to do, what we need to do is get our last caller in. They've been waiting almost 2 hours in the queue. So I want to make sure that we get to them, and then we're going to read our super chats. What's your last question?
All right, but it's not a contradiction to not think odds are universal. So that's your problem, not my problem.
Okay.
That had
I
nothing to
disagree
do with what he said,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah, that's exactly why you said it was a contradiction.
The contradiction specifically is saying nobody ought to do anything, and also
Yeah,
I ought
nobody
to
else
take this
is
wallet.
universal.
That's a
Okay, nobody else is
contradiction. If nobody ought to
universal,
do
right?
anything,
But
then you
nobody
ought
else
not
is
take that
universal.
wallet.
Yeah,
It's not the case that you ought to take that wallet, so you'd be committed to both I ought to take this wallet and I ought not take this wallet, which is just a direct contradiction, unfortunately.
No, it's a direct contradiction because you're projecting in a universal. So good try though.
Nope, he's committed to these things.
This is a bad position to be in right now.
Yeah.
All right, maybe another day we'll continue it. That's fine.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Yep.
Well, he tried. He really did try. He gave it his all. Hey, friends, thanks for being here.
Definitely.
It's been a long stream so far. We've been on for 3 hours. We're going to take a call from Sam, and then we're going to read y'all's super chats. I believe it's Arden. Is it super chats over $5 or $10 tonight?
Yep, $5 and up.
That's what I thought. Okay, super chats over $5 and up will be read here. Let's grab Sam all the way from Georgia, is a theist and is asking, is it a bad idea to hold on to Christianity? And that's a fair question. How you doing, Sam? You're on the line with Justin and Ian.
Hello. Good evening.
Hey, how's it going?
Doing well. Thanks for asking.
Yes.
Sam, it sounds like from your question you might be deconstructing a little bit.
Yes.
Okay.
So I've been watching the show, and I had called in about a while ago. And it just was pointed out to me about like how maybe with Christianity, like it teaches you to have some negative behaviors. And I guess I kind of see I have a feeling of still wanting to hold on anyway. And of course, like I will also know other people who want to do the same thing. and I guess like maybe they just don't speak out at all about there being any contradictions in the Bible, there being anything bad in the Bible. However, like I will, because like I kind of feel like, because I feel like I won't try to indoctrinate others and won't really. I still like to sing like songs like all the time, you know, just like break out in songs. But like I kind of like figure it's like, oh well, if anyone could know what I'm saying while I'm singing these songs, that means they speak my tribal language, which then like yeah, that would be something exciting, and we'll talk about that. And you know, because I kind of feel like, hey, if I don't say it in English, well, what harm am I doing? And if I am learning about what are some of these bad behaviors, well, then I could undo it and still enjoy, you know, singing the songs and all the other things that come with it.
So I actually knew some people when I was in ministry that I would classify them as not really being believers, but their children came into the church, and because their children became regular members of the church, they figured maybe they should go as well. It's kind of like a family. And you know what? It was lovely to have them around, and we made lots of valuable connections with them. They made new friends in the church. In fact, that's how I met them. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, if you feel like the church gives you some social structure and like you have friends that go there and you enjoy your experience, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. What I would say is you might have an experience like what a lot of people have, which is if you do this for a long time, then it may start to feel like you're pretending, and that can be really uncomfortable for you. And it's not true for everybody. One of my best friends' parents growing up wasn't a believer, and he made a deal with his wife when they got married. She was a believer, that as long as the kids were in the house, he would go to church every Sunday with her. And he did for every day those kids were under the age of 18. He went to church every weekend with the family, and he was willing to commit to that. And did he enjoy it? Probably not. But I mean, it didn't hurt him. Like, it didn't do any harm. But I can tell you, for me personally, is I would feel a little bit uncomfortable going to church regularly. But if it doesn't make you feel uncomfortable, I don't think there's anything inherently bad about it. And having some community, seeing people that you enjoy, people that you like to be around on a regular basis, it can be healthy for you.
I guess you also made me remember, like, yeah, like to leave completely will also mean that, like, also not associating with some people. And like, as I come to like understand like why I went ahead and started down my journey, like I could just see how someone else could also be a believer, and you just kind of point out to them where it's like, I don't know, I see how I could hold on, so I can see how they could hold on too. So it's just kind of like, I would still want that relationship with them.
Yeah. If it's bringing you benefit mentally and emotionally, I can't see how it would have a negative impact. I would say this, though, it does kind of depend on the church. Like, if you're going to a church where the church has really destructive views, then I would say, listen, if you want to hold on to church community, find a better church, right? Because by going to that church, you're propping up destructive views. But if you're going to a church that doesn't have dangerous views and they're not harming anyone, and it makes you feel a sense of community, I can't see how that would be a bad thing. And again, it's up to you. Like, I know me personally, I would feel comfortable doing that week in and week out, especially because a lot of people know my position. Eventually, somebody will figure out your position, and they'll know that you're no longer like a true believer, and it might be a point of discord. I know it probably would be for me.
I don't know. How could you call me not true if I still have the emotion to want to break out into a worship song and just kind of like, that is an emotion. Like, I would have to fight back to like not do that.
Because it's fun.
Or like I would have to learn to stop doing that.
It's enjoyable. I enjoyed it even when I was at the end of my deconstruction and I knew I didn't really believe anymore. I still enjoyed singing the songs. Like, it's not not a horrible thing to do. Like the words meant nothing to me at that point. Like the words were meaningless, but the action was fun. Being with my friends, singing the songs, clapping, things like that. We had a good time.
Yeah. I feel like that's true
Yeah.
of a lot of songs, like singing along to songs with your friends. There's like a lot of songs where when you're singing the words, like the words aren't true, It's when you're singing oh gosh, I can't even say the name of the song anymore because of how embarrassing it is that I didn't remember it. But listen, when you're singing with your friends that you hopped off the plane at LAX, you didn't actually need to be doing that. It doesn't need to be true.
Yeah. I don't think it's a problem personally, Sam. As long as you're not hurting anyone and your church isn't hurting anyone, I can't see a problem with it.
Oh, well, I guess I will have to give you this information. Like, yeah, like we do have some like extremely conservative views. So, I mean,
Well, I think that can be harmful. Like if the viewpoints of your church, it harms other people, or invalidates their existence, then I would say, yeah, don't go to that church. Go to a church that doesn't invalidate people. Like if you were going to a church that was still like mostly they had segregation views, right? Don't you think that would be a terrible thing to do? Like even though you enjoy going to church, would you want to go to a church that believes that they should be segregated?
well, man, now I can see how people struggle with this. Because,
Right.
no, it's yeah, you brought up something about with race. I guess I see why you brought it up because yeah, that would be something where I would struggle more to say, like a person.
Yeah, it's
I
a
don't know. If
characteristic
you
of the
don't want to
human
be,
experience that you didn't choose.
I don't know, if you don't want to be separated from somebody, you can understand how a person could have that flawed thinking of even having racist thinking. Because, like, yeah, I know people like that too who do think like it's best for every single race to live on their own, and that like each
They still
race should have
exist.
their own country to themselves. And I could see how a person could get to that views, and I don't know.
I had a King
I don't have
James
that view
only
myself.
believer as a neighbor once, and she was my neighbor at the time I was married to a woman of color. And the first time she met my wife, we went out to get lunch together, and all three of us were believers. And my wife got up to go to the bathroom, and she leans over the table and she goes, "Justin, you're living in sin." I'm like, "What are you talking about, living in sin?" She goes, "You're not with your own kind." And I was like, I cannot fucking believe in the 216th year of the Lord Jesus Christ that somebody would say that to somebody at lunch while their spouse is in the bathroom. But there are churches that still teach this nonsense. So what I'm saying is, if you go to a church that teaches nonsense, I think that is where I would draw the line. Don't go to a church that is going to harm any individual, whether it's about race, whether it's about wealth or inequality, whether it's about your sex and gender. Any churches that is demonizing other people and causing harm, you don't need to be a part of that. You can find a healthy congregation that doesn't do that.
I don't know, but the whole point would just be like, okay, maybe not the church, but still, maybe about the people who still believe the things from that church.
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Like, would you say that would be bad? Would you still say it would be bad to hang out with those people? Like, what if there's family who hold the views from that church?
That seems to be more of like a broad question. I think that's a tough question. I don't know. Like the question of like, should you cut off your like family members if they hold like regressive, like fucked up views? I don't know. That seems like a tough
Yes, I will
question.
ask outright. Like, if I have a family member who, like, one who is anti-LGBT, and I am I'm queer, and another one who believes that ideally every race should be with their own country, which I think I don't know if that is racist. I mean, but
Sounds
yeah,
like
that would
it.
be
Sounds
the
like
other
you're in the
one. Like,
Bible
would it
Belt.
be okay to?
Yeah. Wait, are you there? Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. Probably what I'd say about that. I think it's totally fine for you to cut those people off. I don't think that you're necessarily obligated to. And in fact, I think that if you don't talk to those people, if you don't try to get through to those people, you know, probably nobody will. I have a friend who I talk to at work. He's like a coworker of mine, and he's very conservative, extremely conservative. He's like alt-right even, but he's a really good friend of mine. And I talk to him constantly, and we're constantly like arguing about like politics, about you know like worldviews, and it's through discussions with him that I've brought him towards like more neutral, like central positions. And I don't think that anybody's obligated to go out into the world and like be that person. You know, you got to protect your peace, of course. But if you want to, I think it's totally fine to keep those people in your life and, you know, maybe talk to them about it. Maybe say, you know, there's actually like a lot of apologetics on this. I don't know if Justin has opinions about the quality of them, but I know there's like a lot of work. um there's like some like scholarly literature that argues that the Bible doesn't make the claims about like homosexuality or like the LGBTQ plus community that a lot of Christians try to portray that it does.
Yeah, there are some apologetics. I personally didn't find them convincing when I was in the faith, which is, I think, that was a hard pill for me to swallow because it was like an inevitable consequence. That being said, there are some apologetics that might be convincing to you, although I'm not trying to salvage your faith or anything. What I am saying is, though, that it sounds like you actually are in a difficult position because it sounds like it's not just that you enjoy going to church, but also like the people there are related to their family, aren't they?
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
you can't abandon your family. Yeah. I think that's tough. You know, that's the type of thing where when I was in seminary and I had to do my counseling classes, one of the first lessons that I learned was sometimes you need to refer somebody to a specialist. And we're not trained to be specialists in this area. We're trained to tell you like what the Bible says, right? So here's my good recommendation. Sam, I would get in contact with our friend Dr. Joanne Ketch. She's a PhD holding licensed therapist, and she does specialize specifically in deconstruction. And she works with people that are deconstructing, people that have already deconstructed, and also people that are recovering from substance abuse. She's amazing. This is kind of her area of specialty. I think someone like Dr. Joe can give you much, much better advice than I would be able to give you. And I don't feel any shame referring you to a specialist who would give you a much better answer than I would.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, just get in contact with us if you need information. All right.
All right.
All right. Cheers, friend.
Yep, have a great night.
Well, I hope Sam can find a solution that works for them. Like that's a difficult place to be in because you don't want to lose your community. You know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's why I get it. Like, you know, I think I think that's a super difficult situation. And it's kind of true of like a lot of things where like, okay, if your mother is homophobic, do you like cut her off? Like, I don't know, it makes family functions like really messy if you do that. Like you probably won't be able to go to family functions anymore. Are you comfortable cutting off your entire family, even like the ones that aren't homophobic? Or I don't know. Like there's just like lots of considerations, I think. I don't think that well, there are wrong answers to that, right? Like, you know, keeping her in your life and saying nothing, that's a wrong answer. But
Yeah.
I think that I think there's like a variety of acceptable answers.
I think so. It's hard too because like when we start talking about like interpersonal relationships and things with that, there's so much to know about human psychology and behavior that I don't know, that you're really getting into dangerous territory. Like would hate to give somebody advice that turned out to be bad life advice.
I think that's fair enough. Yeah.
But that being said, friends, we're going to read all the super chats that are $5 and over. And we really appreciate everyone being here tonight. It was a long stream and y'all slugged it out with us over some really in-depth conversations that I'm sure went over my head. And certainly not the audience, as you guys are very bright. I don't do philosophy. That's why we've got Ian with us. But thank you so much for the $5 super chat from literally Lou. Ian matches energy, and we love that for them, or love them for that. Thank you, Lou.
Yeah, thanks, Lou. Great to see you here, by the way.
Then we'll just alternate. So Ian, you got the next one.
Okay. Mystic Mind Analysis, thanks so much for the super chat. The Bible is mythology. Many ideas are of its ancient time, but by law of averages, there's bound to be at least one good moral, so why bother? I agree with this. I think that if you take a wild stab in the dark, you're going to get some things right. There's like some basic moral principles, if nothing else, like don't murder your own children, usually.
It seems like it, yeah.
I wonder,
cannibalizing your children should be off the table.
Like, I feel like there's almost like an evolutionary sort of effect going on here where cultures that failed to come up with like certain basic moral principles, well, those cultures just didn't survive. They got weeded out.
Yeah, true. Let's get our next one in here. We've got $20 from Genji. Thank you so much. Good to see you tonight. It says, when I started deconstruction, I had to deal with Paul Copan's apologetics for the Amalekite genocide. Reading Tom Stark's Human Faces of God was pivotal in demolishing Copan's arguments. So I've been thinking about that, trying whether or not I want to like eventually write a rebuttal to Copan's "Is God a Moral Monster?" because I think the God of the Bible is a moral monster, and I think Copan's book is a cope at best. And I would love to see a really good, robust response to Copan's book from somebody who has a pretty decent education in the Bible and the ancient Near East. So hopefully when I'm done with my current book, I can start working on that one. But yeah, Copan's book it's hard to stomach if you're a person with like moral and mental fortitude.
It's interesting you say that because I was actually thinking when I was reading about justice, I feel like William Lane Craig's apologetic for the Amalekites is decisively at odds with justice as a concept. So justice, like broadly understood, is just like people getting what they deserved. And in order for a punishment to be just, the one and only thing that could make it just is like wrongdoing, which means that if God is giving up punishment to the Amalekite infants who have not done wrong, it is like automatically unjust insofar as they don't deserve that. So I think it's at odds. Yeah, go for it.
I'm gonna say that's why I usually frame my question on this topic around justice. And I usually start with Deuteronomy 32:4, where it says God is just in all of his ways. And everything follows after that because no one's going to disagree that God isn't perfectly just. And I think saying perfectly good, I think most human beings understand what that means, but people will equivocate on that.
Yeah.
I think just is more narrow, and people are like, oh yeah, God has to be just. Well, if he's just, well, then that means he always does the right thing. Like he's always got the right end of the scales.
Yeah. I think gosh, not to yap for too long, but I think like the position that they are necessarily committed to is that it's not unjust to give a punishment from somebody who didn't do wrong. Like if you give a punishment to somebody that did nothing wrong, that isn't an injustice. I think they have to be committed to that.
Right.
And that's at odds with literally just like basic definitions of justice. Like there's no way to define justice at that point.
And if you deny the idea that punishing somebody for a crime they didn't commit isn't an injustice, then we have no idea what injustice means anymore. Yeah. It's just not literally a thing.
Yeah. That's the other thing I was thinking about. I think this has like insane implications for like how we should structure a society. If you genuinely believe that it's not an injustice to punish somebody who didn't do anything wrong, I just have no idea like how we would form any kind of legal code at that point.
Yep. That's why when I go to the atrocity of the Bible, I try to find the ones that are specifically punishments, because a punishment is usually some sort of carriage or miscarriage of justice. But
yeah, Definitely. I think that's good. That's a good point. Yeah. Okay. Merle, thanks so much.
9.99 from Merle. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I lost track. Is it mine or yours?
No, it's mine.
Okay, go ahead.
Merle, thanks so much for the super chat. My two favorite counter apologists, Justin, I've learned so much about the Bible from you. Ian, I love the bolo, and holy, the apologists on your channel are brutal. Yep.
They really are. And 4.99 from Poopman Jones says, I need to know what brand of paint this guy drinks. He's on an entirely new level of incoherent confidence.
That's amazing. You said a whole truckload of words that had no meaning.
You got the Jesse Lee Peterson over there.
Yeah.
You should set up a debate with Jesse Lee Peterson.
I would love it.
God Sinner, thanks so much for the $5 super chat. I need help with what the hell is going on. I can only understand every fifth word from the caller. From Caracal. Thank you so much for the super chat.
Yeah, W, Karen. And $5 from Stephen G. Clenard says, for fuck's sake, could someone pull the plug on this? This does not respect the audience. Well, see, that's what we're saying there, Stephen. Like, there's actually quite a few people who enjoy philosophical debates, and like, I think it would be unfair to assume that everybody likes the style of debate that I like. That makes sense. I think it's good that we've got Ian here to tackle these philosophy subjects because I'm learning. I'm over here learning stuff since I never got the opportunity to study it. So I want Ian to be here teaching everybody.
Yeah. I don't know. I appreciate that. Yeah. From the Fuzzy Logic. Whoa, philosophy name mentioned? I prophesize that someone will eat the baby paste before the end of this show. Hashtag rock hard for Doug. Indeed, somebody did. Wow. You're the Messiah, the Fuzzy Logic. That's more prophecies than Jesus.
Fantastic. And 5 from Joshua Everett says, I would just eat the God so no one else had to deal with it either. I would just eat the God so no one else would have to do it. Is this a quote from something that I'm unaware of?
Not sure. The first thing that comes to mind is eating the cud, but I can't imagine that it has anything to do with that.
It might be a quote from the God-eating penguin.
Science Lover, thanks so much for the super chat. Biblical infallibility, word of mouth accounts, anonymous authors, scribal errors, lack of chain of custody, and documented denominational revisions. Thanks anyway. Literally, gosh, that's like a devastating point. Like if the presuppositionalist wants absolute certainty, there's just no way to get that from the Bible, not only because your eyes are not infallible, so you could have just misread all of it, but also because the history is like super ambiguous in like tons of places.
Literally, the first book I read on the transmission of the manuscripts and how they differed and were changed. Textual criticism is what they call the field. The first book I read as a Christian, I was like, oh yeah, they're not infallible. Sorry, we don't even know what's in the originals. We have no idea if it's infallible. It's just such an untenable position.
Yeah.
And $5 from Prisoner Fan says these callers are rolling a natural one on their arguments. Rock hard for Doug. I can agree with that sentiment. Yeah.
Piriform, thanks so much for the super chat. Dave is very confident for someone with no foundation to his logic. Brutal.
But the argument worked in his philosophy class, so it must work here.
Yeah, it worked in like when he was just talking to like other Orthodox Christians, it went really well. They were like, oh yeah, you get it. You got this.
And $5 from God Sinner says, I'm not a brain in a jar because my suspension fluid would boil over by now. Thanks, y'all, for making it easier from Caracal. Well, thank you, Caracal. We appreciate that.
Meg, thanks so much for the super chat. After much research, line streams, I've learned anyone that uses right after every statement they make will turn out to be a coward. Science. Right?
And $10 from Reverend Nate. Good to see you tonight. Says, how about a Trinity concept based on Transformers? A God that is a space robot, a cassette player, and a fighter jet all in one. Problem of evil goes away with an unfeeling robot cassette player. True, robots don't have feelings, at least not yet.
Yeah. All hail
But God's a
Soundwave,
transformer.
the holy ruler. Charles Better? I want to say Charles Ledbetter. Gosh, okay, got it. Charles Ledbetter. Thanks so much for the super chat. Deconstruction Zone. I've been searching for someone for the last 20 years of my destructing that could actually tell me the truth and know the Hebrew language. Much appreciation and love.
Well, thank you, Charles. I do I do still have a lot to learn, but I'm shocked by the amount of biblical lack of biblical literacy in the apologetic community. It's terrifying. And $5 from Meg says, if mental gymnastics were an actual workout, Peter has got to be in John Cena shape right now. Yeah, I can certainly agree with that also.
And his name is John Cena.
Foxy Illuminata. Thanks so much for the super chat. Good to see Ian on the line. I personally would like to see them paired up with other hosts in the future. Imagine Ian and Matt together. I don't know. Imagine.
Dynamite duo. I did pass the information along to Matt. I think it's something that might be in the works.
That would be super chill, yeah.
And 999 from Simeon. Good to see you, Simeon. Says, it's so funny how scared the Discord Philbro are of Ian. Anytime he shows up on a new platform, they try their damnedest to spawn kill him and always fail spectacularly.
True.
That's the case.
And they always will. And it's for one simple reason. It's because their understanding of philosophy, it's been like human centipeded into their mouth from other Discord Philbros. They don't read. None of them read. That's the problem. The good Discord Philbros read. The Discord Philbros that beat the fuck out of you, they read. They pick up books. They understand the topics. Mr. Borikua, thanks so much for the super... pronounced Borikwa. Borikwa. I can't.
You gotta roll the R
I
too.
can't roll my R's. I can't do it. Mr. B. Good grief. The amount of mental gymnastics and dishonesty tonight has thrown me for a loop. Absolutely infuriating to hear a dense wall of pomp. Yep.
It is. And they're confident in it too. Like they're really convinced in it. From Charles Ledbetter says, I've had people that tell me the truth, but I understand with the songs. Helps me remember my mother. Yeah. We feel us away when we hear a familiar song,
Definitely. Reverend Nate, thanks so much for the super chat. I asked Ian the other day, now I want the deacon's answer. After the Big Bang, do you think the universe wanted to cuddle or did it roll over and go to sleep? I vote cuddler universe.
Given the cold indifference of the universe, I think it smoked a cigarette and rolled over and went to bed and then forgot to put the cigarette out in the ashtray and lit the bed on fire and burned the house down.
I feel that, yeah. I think my answer is something similar to that it was I think upon reflection, I definitely think it's a cold universe. Thanks so much for the super chat. It bad guy. What was Jesus's worst take? Was Jesus anti-jokes or was Paul anti-jokes?
I think Jesus could take a good joke. I think Jesus's worst take was defending the law of Moses, and the worst instance of that was in Mark chapter 7. When he chooses a moment to chastise the Pharisees for not following the law of Moses. And the specific law that he chooses is the one where you're instructed to kill your child if they curse father or mother. He's saying, listen, you guys aren't following this law because you're bad. What that means is that Jesus thinks that if your child curses you, you should kill it according to law. That's a pretty rough take from a guy that's supposed to be like loves everybody. $8 from Genji says, Soundwave superior, Construction's inferior.
Constructicons.
Oh,
It's a
Constructicons.
it's a Transformers reference.
I'm so sorry. I'm lame. I didn't catch that. Okay, so is Soundwave another Transformer reference?
Yes, he is. He's in fact the robot cassette player from earlier.
Oh, okay. All right. So Soundwave superior, Constructicons inferior. Who are you calling inferior? No one would want to follow an uncharismatic ball like you. I feel like that's some insider jargon I don't know about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a gosh, he really got all 5 of the Constructicons. He really got their ass.
Well, thank you, Genji. I think that's all of them. Ian, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was a blast. I had a great time.
I had a blast. And if you like Ian's work, make sure you go to TikTok and YouTube and follow Allegedly Ian. And we're going to be live tomorrow morning on the Unapologetic if you want more Ian content. So thanks for being here, friends. It was a little bit of a long one, but you stuck it through, and we love you for it.
Yep. Thank you so much.
I don't know if they can still hear us. I think once the music plays, they can't hear us.
They can hear you. We got you.
Bye, friends.
Patreon.com/call the line.
Join the Patreon.